So, sir, thank you so much. Really, I'm only 17 episodes old with this podcast, but I have never been this excited for an episode. It's really, really an honor, like to be talking with you, because I mean, in your profession, you've been doing this for so long. You've trained so many students, and like you've made like you've kind of like created the way for so many different like scientists like in the future. So thanks a lot. It's
Thank
really,
you.
really an honor to be talking to you. So thank you so much just for appearing on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you for the interest in my work and discussing some physics and
Yeah.
beyond, metaphysics.
I was really like so excited when I saw your email and you were like so into it. Yeah, let's do it. I was thinking, you know what? I have been putting off contacting you for like 2 months. I'm not kidding.
Mhm.
I was
Okay.
so anxious of like reaching out to you. Like, should I do it? Can I even like do this? Like, would I be able to do it? And I was like, what if he says no? Probably a lot of people are contacting him. He's not going to say yes. He's probably has to teach and stuff like that. But when you said it, it's one of those things when you feel like, wow, like manifestations work sort of thing.
Well, I mean, I appreciate it. I mean, I am a professor. I like to profess. I anybody who wants to listen, I'm always happy to talk to them. And of course, I learn from people too when I
Yeah.
talk. And I've been thinking about a lot of the. I've been. It's not easy to be a physicist. I've been doing this for decades, and of course. Why do I like to do physics? Because I like to understand, the way things work. Why are we here? What is our purpose? I realized that transcends physics. I didn't know that when I was 17 years old, but I mean I do know that now. And any way that I can possibly aid humans, to
Yeah.
kind of be a little more comfortable in the reality of our lives, our existence. Look, I'm more than happy to do it.
I'm really glad. I kind of like, so my first question itself is kind of going to be, let's kind of dig into right into like, the article that kind of like blew you up like wide open. So you had an interview with Popular Mechanics, if I'm not wrong, sometime around last year. And your theory was that our consciousness might actually be from a higher dimension. Before we even go into the understanding of this concept, I want to ask, like, you've in your career, you must have written like so many papers, you've trained so many students, but
Yeah.
this particular one, kind of in the age of online social media and technology and everything, this topic of our consciousness coming up from higher dimensions, it kind of like blew up. It had like a wide reach. Like having like I think in the last 1 year, you must have like sat down and thought about it, like why this particular topic kind of like triggered the interest in so many people. So as a physicist or just as a person, like has it like made sense to you like why there is such a sudden curiosity or interest in this particular topic?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And I would say, I mean, I agree. I had never had anything blow up like that one article last year. I'd been contacted since then by over 400 people. I have people sent me like 25 books that I have on my shelf that I have yet to read. It was many interviews. And I think, I mean, obviously something resonated. And I think that part of the issue is that humans, in this day and age, there's sort of a selfish aspect where we think that, we focus on our individual achievements. We celebrate them. And, of course, we have our own human rights and everything. But I think what has been lost in some sense is this concept of connectedness. And I think that, um, when I got into the theory, it's this metaphysical theory that basically I can show very straightforwardly that we are all connected. And, we were not born in a vacuum. And even a vacuum has energy, 0 point energy. So I think what happened, I think that there is an inner self that each of us has. I might call it a conscience, you might call it a soul. And I think and so something resonated there with many, many people. And as a physicist, I was expecting to get a lot of criticism because at some point, it kind of, when you get into the hyperdimensionality, then there are natural questions about, well, okay, what created all this? Is there a creator? but I mean, like 99.5 or more percent, maybe even 99.9, we're all extremely positive about it. So, I mean, clearly there was something that resonated. And I mean, again, as I've said, that I believe that we're not just the particles that make ourselves up. We're something much, much more. And I think that that resonated with people. So I think that that more than anything, and I think that it is human nature to struggle. It's human nature to try and understand, why are we here? What is the purpose of our existence? What is this strange thing that we call reality, the world, consciousness? And so I think that, even again, whether I'm right or wrong, the fact that there was a possible, I don't even want to say an answer, but sort of a way of thinking that makes things a little bit easier to understand, I think that resonated with people.
Hmm. This idea of our consciousness, our thoughts or ideas or inspiration might come from higher dimensions. What exactly triggered that theory in you? Like what exactly, like, is there like some personal experience or something that like or scientific something when you were experimenting with something in physics and science in general? What kind of triggered this idea or this inspiration? Hey, these our consciousness might actually come from a different dimension.
Well, when I was a college student in Pasadena, California, in the 1980s, I always was fascinated by the concept of my brain as a finite volume, and how is it that this finite volume can comprehend the volume of the universe. And of course, as I took more courses like general relativity with Kip Thorne, quantum mechanics, then I began to understand that physicists have not only said that there is, one universe, there may be parallel universes. And so you get into this kind of, and I don't know if you ever remember the book, The Lorax, from Dr. Seuss. It's a famous book, or sorry, Dr. Horton Hears a Who. So, well, no, yeah, Horton Hears a Who. So it's about this microscopic people that live on a pollen, piece of pollen that's on top of a flower. And so, when you understand the mathematics, the conformal mapping, how you can squish things like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, then you kind of think about these things and you're like, well, there probably are higher dimensions. Even physicists have postulated that there are higher dimensions required to explain string theory, for example. Right. And so when you get into this realization, and from a mathematical perspective, it's easy to talk about higher and higher dimensions. It's just something, there's something called the metric. And so you talk about what is distance in, one dimension. Zero dimension is a point, but one dimension would be a line. How do you define distance? Well, it's x1 minus x2. Then you go into, two dimensions, and then it's like the hypotenuse of a right triangle, x1 minus x2 squared plus y1 minus y2 squared square root. And then you get into three dimensions, and you're just adding another x3 minus, or whatever, z1 minus z2 finally squared. So, I mean, it's very easy from a mathematical perspective to explain what is a higher dimension if it exists. And so I think that when I just started thinking, trying to understand, the hardest thing for me is, how is it that I have this sense of past, present, and future simultaneously? How is it that I have this sense that I could just be comfortable with infinity? That I could just go, if our universe goes out to infinity, or are there parallel universes? What's beyond our universe? So sort of just having this sense of infinity and being comfortable with it kind of made me realize that we have a gift. We have a gift of, like, a mathematical gift but it's really imagination. And imagination has no limits. So I can talk about a universe that might be 5 dimensions, 6 dimensions, and and I could imagine, well, what might a life form be inside that? And of course, then I looked at, then, as I'm an Orthodox Christian, so there are some stories, of the miracles of Jesus when he was resurrected. Where did that energy come from to resurrect him? When people would touch him and they would be healed right away. They said, I felt this energy going into me. He walked through walls after he resurrected. So these kinds of these attributed miracles are actually very easy to explain from a hyperdimensional perspective. So it just kind of became very natural for me that if we can imagine it, it probably somewhere it may be actually a reality. And so it just kind of became a very natural thought process for me that we probably do live in a world of higher dimensions. And then what happens if you say, like, I've had people call me and say, well, there's only 10 dimensions. Okay. So, well, wait a minute. Okay. So if there's 10 dimensions, why aren't there 11? Or if there's 11 dimensions, why aren't there 12? So you get into this thing called inductive reasoning where you're like, well, wait a minute, what is preventing higher dimensions since they do exist on paper mathematically? And so it was sort of from that point of view, there's this thing called Occam's razor that if you have, and if you make an assumption, everything we do about this universe, I can give you an assumption in anything we do. Okay. So if there's this assumption that that there are higher dimensions, then it's actually a lot easier to explain many of the phenomena in this universe, including our awareness, our consciousness of something much greater, using this Occam's razor, because it just, by going into I believe, infinite dimensions, I believe that basically you're minimizing your assumptions.
You were talking about the possibility that Jesus, for example, could actually be a being from higher dimension, right? When writing about how our thoughts are like probably our consciousness is from a higher dimension, I did come across like some articles that oppose this particular theory that you put forth, right? Because they're calling it, wait, this just sounds like science fiction. He can't prove anything. So if it can't prove, and it's better to just say, I don't know. I don't know is like a good answer, but the thing is that if you really want to push forward and explore and find answers, then I don't know is not the proper way to like really go forward. But I suppose, considering you said that you're an Orthodox Christian, you must have also gotten some pushback when you said that Jesus could probably be a being from higher dimension, because Jesus is like seen as a sacred being, right? He fits into the space of spirituality and being sacred and everything, but you are now bringing in science and imagination and saying that he's probably a being from a higher dimension.
Right.
But I think that takes a bit of like, considering you say that you're an Orthodox Christian, but I think it takes a bit of like open-mindedness to say that he could actually be from the. Have you gotten some pushback on that angle? That like
That's a great question. Yeah, let me first, just if I could just answer your first comment about, fiction and all this. Yes, I'm a physicist. And of course, in my real world of physics, I deal with just physics. But the point is that it is natural for humans to go beyond. And let me give you an example. Outside of, the solar system, we have actually no evidence that physics, as we understand it, actually works in Alpha Centauri or the Crab Nebula or beyond the Milky Way galaxy. So that's actually something which I call faith. Physicists have faith, for example, that energy is conserved, charge is conserved, momentum is conserved. But we actually, beyond our limited experiments on Earth, and within the solar system, we really have very little evidence that physics, or proof, I should say. We have evidence, but we don't really have proof that, because we've never been there. So there's not, and even Isaac Newton, okay, when Isaac Newton developed the theory of gravitation, they called him a heretic because they said, you're asking us to believe in something we can't see. Of course, we all feel gravity. That's called our weight. We see the effects of gravity, things falling down towards the center of the earth. But the thing is that they called him a heretic because he was transcending our 5 dimensions and saying there's this thing called the gravitational field. Okay. So, to address I see nothing wrong as a physicist to, go ahead, criticize me for daring to having imagination, but this is what inspires me in physics, is to understand that physics came from somewhere. You can't just have something come from nothing. And so that Big Bang, that energy came from somewhere, and it was there before the Big Bang, we can't do experiments to know what happened before the Big Bang. But, most physicists, I think, would agree that there was something, energy just can't come out of nothing, especially if you believe in conservation of energy. So the point is that, there was definitely something before. We just can't do experiments on it. But just because we can't do experiments on it doesn't mean that we can't imagine what might have been.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so I'm sorry, I forgot your second question.
Because you said that Jesus might actually be a being from a higher dimension. I wanted to ask, was there any
Right.
pushback from
Pushback.
this angle? Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, I've given a number of talks and I've been invited to Orthodox, mostly Serbian Orthodox churches. And I've had wonderful feedback, including from priests. Bear in mind that we have in Orthodox Christianity the Holy Trinity. So there's God the Father, God the Son, Jesus, and God the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit. So the point is that even from that evidence of, the burning bush, that God appeared as kind of a fire that wasn't burning the bush, but it was there, you begin to understand that if that was, I wasn't there, so, but that's an ascribed miracle. If it happened, it's probably energy, a different form of energy. Okay. So if you think of God as a painter, he's the creator, and he's painting our world. He painted our world. He created this world, this universe, this three-dimensional plus one time universe. He's outside of that universe. Okay. So whatever we have in this universe, if you think of a painting, it's got, pigments, it's got paper or canvas, oils, whatever. He's outside of that universe. Now, I don't know God the Father, but I would guess that his form of energy, which is a perfect form of energy, which does not convert, that's it. That's his essence, that holy fire. Jesus came to this earth, was brought to this earth because it's hard, it's hard to see an infinite dimensional God. You just see a sort of a projection in this world when you see that fire. So Jesus was a way that human beings who have godlike traits through this creativity, through this ability of creating math that has infinite scope. And so God the Father created a version of himself that is within this world. I call it the particle version of this world. And the Holy Spirit is his kind of a wave connection, his wave, his love connects with us from a spiritual perspective. So in this universe, we have this thing called the wave particle duality. So I'm not saying that God's wave is the same as waves in this earth, but the point is, it was just a beautiful way for me to understand the Holy Trinity. You have God outside his creation, and then God inside his creation in a particle form as his son, Jesus, and then in this pure energy, pure wave form as the Holy Spirit. So, thus far, I've talked about it, I've written about it. I've never really gotten any pushback. I've had sometimes a priest say, well, be careful. Well, look, I have not met God. So I'm not saying this is the way it is. I'm just simply saying that although I cannot understand anything outside of this universe because I can't do experiments on it, that doesn't mean that I can't use my physics as sort of a tool to perhaps analogize what might be outside this universe. Okay, so for example, here's another analogy. Every hadron, which is neutrons or protons, which is the bulk of what makes up matter, are made up of three quarks. Okay, those quarks are connected in a quantum mechanical wave function way. And the beautiful thing about those quarks is they cannot be separated. If you have to, the force actually increases dramatically. I believe it's exponentially, if I recall, as you separate the quarks. Well, to me, it gives me an analogy, a way to kind of analogize the Holy Trinity. That when Jesus died, or when his body, his temporal body was when he was killed, and he was put in the crypt, and then he went down to hell to save the souls that had been not saved. He just tore open the gates of hell, and there was nothing that could stop Jesus to go in and come back out because of that force that is between the Holy Spirit, between God the Father, God the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Again, I'm not saying that Jesus is a quark. I'm just simply saying that wouldn't it make sense that if you have this entity, God, who created himself in this spirit or is in this Holy Trinity, the point is he has an imprint on this universe. And I see that imprint personally when I see three quarks. I can't explain it beyond that, but it's just very beautiful for me. I'm not saying that, I'm not a theologian and, I don't know really what's going on, but my perspectives just give me so much happiness, give me so much enlightenment, a sense of wonder and a sense of what is beyond that is something we can't even really fully comprehend.
And the thing is that what you are theorizing, it is not so fetched, Like, for example, mathematician Srinivasa Ramanujan, he
Yes.
actually said the numbers and the math, that complicated math was actually like he had heard whispers from his deity, from the Hindu deity, that like she spoke to him. The same was also said by Leonardo da Vinci. He said that it's the ideas, the vision of how to sculpt and the paint and everything. It was like given to him. He heard voices and like messages. Nikola Tesla as well. He said like the math was like he hears the math, and that's how it all like makes sense to him. So it is not very far fetched, like when you compare to like such geniuses also like believing that the thing that they produced does not purely belong to them alone. It is coming from somewhere. They're getting that inspiration from somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, Tesla specifically said, my mind is simply a receiver and a transmitter. I'm receiving something from beyond. He didn't he was religious, but he didn't specifically articulate. It was from some great source of information. And look, if you think about God the Father, who has been going around forever, okay? There's a concept that this kind of it takes a while to kind of let it settle. But if you've been living forever, existing forever, you figured everything out. We call it I call it the Hilbert space of everything, the Hilbert space of knowledge. So the point is, everything there, has been worked out. And so when you tap into this spirit, this force, whatever you want to call it, this higher dimensional entity, you can gain incredible insights that have already been worked out. Tesla would say, I get an idea, I get this flash in my head, and sometimes I grab it and then I do something with it. Sometimes I forget, I let it go. I understand that from one who has himself published papers. I have patents. I get it. Something flashes in your head, you get this idea, and then it's like, oh, this might actually work. And then you try, you work, you kind of do the hard work that you have to do in science, to make it work. And it's a beautiful feeling that you made something that was never made before, at least in the human space.
Right.
But it's been worked out because God's been around forever.
Right.
There's nothing new to God. God is the essence. He's everything. I am that I am. I'm the Alpha, I'm the Omega. When you see it that way, then all this competition about who gets, for example, who understands solar, nuclear reactions. I mean, it's fascinating. It's amazing, but it's not about, you didn't make the sun. I didn't make the world. It's already been here. We're just trying to understand it. And so we have a choice. We can try and understand it without God and, work hard and all the struggles and experiments. And then there's this point of view that, well, it's like, maybe if I'd been more connected with God, maybe he would have told me, he would have given me that insight. And there's a famous quote, and I'm sorry, I think it was T.S. Lewis. I'm sorry, I forgot about who it was. But he basically talks about these scientists or physicists climbing up a mountain, and they're climbing up, and then they get to the top, and they're struggling, and they're tired, and pooped out, and they see these monastics. They see monks already, and the monks say to them, "What took you so long?" So so I love that quote because it sort of summarizes the human struggle. The human struggle right now is kind of without God. And so the part of that struggle is to realize that, gee, life is awfully hard when you don't have the original creator who made us and who intended a beautiful world for us, but we kind of blew it. So it kind of makes you miss that.
Yeah.
And so in other words, yes, I'm religious, but at the same time, I see a sort of a symmetry, a complementarity between the physical world, between physics and the metaphysical world, which is, more spiritual.
Yeah.
I don't see anything that contradicts them. And I guess what really got me into this is when people would tell me, some people would say, "You're a physicist. How can you believe in God?" And yet, the irony of all the scientists, there was some article I read some years ago. The highest percentage of religious scientists tend to be physicists. So, I mean, again, and I respect everybody's point of view. I don't know what reality is. I believe in Jesus with every core of my body. But again, I'm not telling people what to believe. All I'm trying to say is that let me have the right as a physicist to believe in something that transcends physics.
Yeah.
That's all. And if people are interested in hearing that point of view, hey, I'm more than happy to share it. But I'm not going to proselytize. That's not what we do as Orthodox Christians. We help people. We try and follow Jesus as far as his example of self-sacrifice, of loving one another, of trying to seek peace. But I'm not going to force it down anybody's throat. If they don't want to hear it, that's fine. But I do talk to people, and I find, and this is part of what you were asking me about with the hyperdimensionality. I see that there is a sadness with humanity in general. We don't treat each other well. We steal from each other. We kill one another. There's an emptiness, and people, they're getting distracted away from these questions, and they're getting more into the materialism of the 3+1 dimensional world. And I think that's sad, because I think that the greatest moments of humanity are not the selfishness. It's the helping one another. It's the heroes that do things to make this world a better place. People like Tesla, who got nothing out of his existence. I mean, poor guy died a pauper. He lived in 2 rooms in the Hotel New Yorker. He had like 7, I forget, or 13 trunks. And that was it. He had no kids, no family. He had family as far as extended family, but no
But
wife.
he died broke, basically. He was completely bankrupt.
Yeah, look at Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus inherited nothing. He was a carpenter's son. And even his body left this world. So I mean, so the point is that it's that self-sacrifice, I think, that leads us closer to the truth, because we need to struggle. There was the president of Bard College, where my daughter used to attend, made a comment about being, mildly impoverished. Okay, that when we are struggling, that's when we're at our best. That's when we seek insight. We seek knowledge. We seek to solve problems. And so I think that, we were meant to do that. We were meant to kind of struggle against the wilderness, to understand what is going on. Why are we here? And but at the same time, when I think about those higher dimensional elements of what I believe my soul, I feel a warmth, a love that I just can't even articulate as a physicist, because I feel connected. I feel this connection to everything, honestly, everything. And the reason I feel connected is through my creator, because he created everything essentially. And so that gives me happiness. And so maybe that might give other people happiness. Look, I'm happy to share it.
Yeah. When you were talking about the intersection of science and faith, it reminded me, I think it's from the Egyptian civilization. There is this quote called as above, so below. So it's like we are one, like the cosmos, and we are like one. And the other thing that you were also saying about, like, one of the reasons why we are so disconnected with all the chaos that is going on in the world is because we are so disconnected from the cosmos. We have, like, when you see all these ancient civilizations like the Mayans or the Egyptians or the ancient India, these the traditions and everything, they were so connected to the cosmos. They were like into reading the stars and constellations and everything. They had all these patterns and these kind of things, but we are so detached. And the more and more detached we are from the cosmos, from like looking up and like imagining like what's going on, like why are we here, why we are put here, the more we are then pushed towards barbarism, like
Yeah.
killing each other, like bombing each other to pieces in a tiny little blue planet in a vast space. Makes it makes no sense. It's painfully funny. It's painfully funny when you like think about like what the hell
Yeah.
are we like doing
Yeah.
here. um
Yeah, no, I 150% agree with you. Uh, you do live on a tiny blue planet in a very ordinary solar system with an ordinary medium-sized star we call the sun, and yet we have such an imagination that we can think about other universes. I will never forget when I was going, you might appreciate this, when I was going to graduate school, I was applying and I got into a number of graduate programs, and I had visited the University of Chicago one spring, cold spring, but sunny day in April. And this was around 1988. And I will never forget, it was a Saturday, and I was there in the physics department, and it was mostly empty, lights were out, but I heard this fascinating conversation, and it was very diplomatic, but it was passionate. Two science physicists going at it. I recognized that one of the voices, Kip Thorne, who was my professor earlier that fall,
what
for
really?
yeah, for general relativity, and he had taken a 6 month or something sabbatical. And Chandrasekhar, who was the Nobel laureate who came up with the physics of stars, understood how stars, the combination between pressure and gravity.
Sorry,
And,
I have to pause here. This was a conversation between Kip Thorne and Chandrasekhar.
and Chandrasekhar.
Wow.
So one future Nobel laureate and then one current Nobel laureate, and they were talking about baby miniature black holes, like quantum black holes, and the possibility that could, in other words, there was a theory that if you had a quantized black hole, like it wouldn't go maybe to a point of infinite density, so you might actually be able to tunnel through it. And so, in other words, for time travel. And I just thought, like, just to be there, even though, again, I just took introduction to general relativity. I wasn't, a master by any point, any metric, but to kind of have been through his course that fall and then to be there later that spring and to listen to these two intellectual giants, kind of hash out these fascinating ideas. That's the essence of physics. I mean, but the point is, even that was, transcends our current understanding. It pushes the envelope. And so I see nothing wrong with a physicist or anybody for that matter to dare to dream, to dare to think of what if this might be. And so, I mean, that's the excitement of being a human being. We don't know. And honestly, I'm not in a rush to know everything, because I think if I knew everything, then things might be a little less exciting. I mean, it would be cool in the sense I'd know God, but the point is, it's that journey. And so the point is, we're all on a spiritual journey, I think, just like those physicists climbing up the mountain. And ultimately, I think we're all gonna meet our maker. We're gonna meet, and we're gonna understand everything. God will be connected in with God's bus, his terminal, his connection, and we're gonna see. Then it's gonna be like looking, like when you're swimming and you see these different worlds, and you explore all of what is, which is infinity. I think that's a beautiful thing.
As a physicist, do you is one of your practice, are you leaning towards string theory?
Well, not really. I mean, right now, string theory, it's not that I don't believe it. It's just to verify it, you need so much energy. It's like to smash particles together. We can't even imagine it at this point in time. I think at some point, if we don't destroy ourselves as human beings, I think we may get to those energies where we can verify. But the essence of physics and science is empirically based. So everything starts from observation. If you can't properly observation, it really becomes more in the realm of metaphysics and math. And so string theory at this point in time is more closer to mathematics, just deep, interesting, cool mathematics. But as far as anything that you can verify, it's not quite there yet. It's going to be quite some time before we ever verify that.
I wanted to ask the scientist Michio Kaku. Like, I think he is into string theory, and I remember like him saying, I think the string theory math proves that the only possible explanation of a consciousness and the universe is that there should be 10 or more dimensions. He said like 10 or 11 dimensions. That's the whole point of like string theory. But I kind of like want to ask you, are there any other theories that negates string theory, that says that, hey, you don't need like so many different dimensions in order to kind of make sense of like what is going on in our consciousness or in our reality, or
Right.
like this is the three to four dimensions that we have access to, like this is it, there is no need for another dimension at all. Are there any other theories that kind of prove that?
Well, no. Right now, again, it's all really speculation.
Okay.
First of all, when you were asking me, this is a multi-faceted answer to that multifaceted question. When you're first of all, let me give you an example that will explain why we probably have higher dimensions than the 3+1. If you take a flat piece of paper, okay, and you say two dots, maybe that's you and me. Okay, we live in a two-dimensional world. Now, that's what we would call Euclidean space. That's flat. There's no crumples, no nothing. Now you add in general relativity. Okay, so now what that does is essentially kind of in an analogous way, it crumples space. So if I crumple that piece of paper, I have essentially converted it from a two-dimensional flat Euclidean object into a three-dimensional. Now, we may still live in two dimensions in that object, but it's now turned into a three-dimensional object. I look at the universe in that way, where we have now energy, we have gravity, we have, four fundamental forces, the strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, electromagnetism, and gravity. So these crumple space-time in a sense. And so where do you get the degree of freedom to crumple? Well, that's from a higher dimension. There is also a concept that Einstein did not like called the spooky action at a distance, where you have two quantum particles, like a spin. Maybe the spin is like a top spinning this way, and then the other spin is spinning this way. But you don't know which is which because of quantum mechanics, because of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. So they're a coupled wave function of two particles, and they can be either this way or this way. Okay. So now what you do is you separate those two particles, as long as they're still coupled from a wave function quantum mechanical perspective. Now you make a measurement on one of the particles. Oh, this one is down. Then you know instantaneously that the other particle has to be this way. So Einstein never liked that because you could separate these particles in theory, by light years of distance. But let me just say this. If those particles are coupled through another dimension, another degree of freedom that doesn't have any bearing with distance, you solve your problem very easily. And there was a famous physicist, David Bohm, who believed that there are hidden variables in quantum mechanics. And nobody's proven thus far, in my opinion, that there may be no hidden variables, but nobody's proving that there are not hidden variables. So I tend to believe, there are hidden variables. And as a consequence of those hidden variables, that's where higher dimensional aspects lie. Let me just say this. There's an unfortunate aspect of humans where they think they can know everything. So, we're going to study this. We're going to figure it out, and we're going to get a theory of everything. So let me give you an example. Isaac Newton comes up with the amazing theory of classical mechanics, gravitation. He explains, the perihelion of Mercury's orbit, why are planets going in a slightly elliptical or extremely elliptical orbit. He explains it all. So this induces this amazing discovery, completely transformed human thought. And this is what inaugurated the Age of Reason. So if you look at the Age of Reason, you see classical music was very precise. It syncopated. It was, writing was very kind of, in sort of a very deterministic. God is a clockmaker. The universe is a clock. All he did is he made the clock and he started it. So the whole human philosophy became based on this kind of calculus, this literally ability to calculate, and mechanics and gravitation. Now, fast forward a couple hundred years, Einstein publishes his paper in 1905 on the electrodynamics of moving bodies. He inaugurates the theory of relativity, completely upends classical low velocity classical mechanics, totally changes it. Now, does that mean that Newton's theory was wrong? No, it wasn't wrong per se. It was just that it works very well, extremely well, in the limit of low speeds, the speeds that we as human beings typically exist. Okay. But when you go to speeds higher, way beyond the human experience, like close to the speed of light, maybe a few percent of the speed of light, now you have to start taking into account new physics. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is this. We are on a journey as the human race. We've learned a lot about the way the world works. We have a lot more to go. We've only just touched on the amazing miracle, the thermodynamic miracle of how the cell, the most complicated machine that we know of in the universe, works. We're only starting to scratch the surface of understanding neurons. How do they fire? Why do they fire? How do they process information? So the point I'm trying to make is that there's an arrogance, unfortunately, with some humans that they think they're going to know everything. I'm going to promise you we don't know everything. And even in our own universe, we have a fundamental issue, constraint called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Mm-hmm. So even where we in our mind, we think of a point, okay? There is no such thing as a point in our universe because that point is doing this. We don't even know what it's doing. There's a fundamental uncertainty in our space-time continuum, which is not classical. It's more like 0-point energy. It's chaotic. It's like when you're looking in an ocean from far away from on an airplane, you see the ocean's flat. But in fact, when you get down, you're on a dinghy, your boat, you're waiting to be rescued. It's going like this. That's the space-time that I see. And so therefore, we're never going to be able to precisely within 0 dimension.
It's impossible. Really.
Yeah. And I believe that fundamental freedom, that fundamental uncertainty gives us our free will. It opens the ability for us to make decisions about our life, to understand that those decisions have consequences, that you cannot calculate the human trajectory of a life.
Yeah. I mean, it's a never-ending pursuit, right? I mean, we can use math, imagination, but even that, when you just like zoom out, that can only stretch so far within our your lifetime, my lifetime, our children's lifetime, or like whatever. It's impossible to get a complete grasp of like what is going on, like how did this all happen? Because at the moment, everything is a theory. Big Bang is a theory. Evolution is a theory. String theory, quantum loop theory. Everything is like a theory. It's like it's a byproduct of all our wonderful imagination and math and everything. Yeah. But I can't fathom like getting to a point. Wow, okay, finally we get everything. We have every answer to every single question. It's impossible. I kind of want. So if I'm not wrong, in terms of like speaking of like multiple dimensions and everything, as a 4-dimensional a being, we have access to the first 3 dimensions, like to move up and down, like left and right, and all, and like in time we can only like move forward, like we can't like go backwards in time or something. So if my what I've read and my understanding is right, like for example, if there is a being, let's say, like another Priyanka living on the 4th dimension or the 5th dimension or 6th dimension, that
Mhm.
being that person would have access to multiple levels of
Correct.
movement and
Of lower dimensions.
right. Oh, yeah, right. Exactly. Would have access to these dimensions, right? And
Yep.
somebody living in the eighth dimension would have access to 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Correct.
But we have
Absolutely.
access to only like three dimensions and stuff. Have you ever
Yeah.
like thought about the possibility that maybe when we are dreaming, when our dreams are like so vivid and like so strong, when you wake up, it is so strange because it takes so many minutes to shake that dream out of your body. Like because for the first few seconds or like, for first some minutes, your body is so convinced that it happened. It really, really happened. The dream is actually real. Then it takes like getting back to the present reality to see that wait, that was actually a dream. Like have
Right.
you like looked into this thing of like instances where we kind of like get a glimpse of another world or another dimension or
Yeah.
something?
Yes, absolutely. I believe that now, obviously, when I dream, it's not that my body that's going into another space of of reality or whatever. It's my soul. Okay, in my opinion. So the point is that there are different aspects. For example, I remember when one morning, it was Thanksgiving morning here in the US many years ago, and I was dreaming, and I had a very vivid dream with my uncle and my mother's brother. And unfortunately, we didn't, we never had a great relationship. It was complicated by many things. Um, and so I was shocked. I was like, what are you doing in here? When I saw him. And I remember seeing a light, like I was in a basement or something, and there was this light like at the end of the basement, like, like a window, very bright. And we kind of, I don't think it was a great interaction that we had. And then I woke up and I was like, God, I should get in touch with my uncle. Like, I hope he's okay. I found out the next Monday, this was on a Thursday. I found out the next Monday that he had passed away that morning. Now, in that case, I think, yeah, he had passed away Thursday morning, but I found out Monday morning that he had passed away. That the morning that I had my dream, he had passed away. There's no question in my mind. I had that dream because I was so shocked because I hadn't seen him for years. Why? And I asked him, why are you here? What are you doing here? And so that to me is a quantum connectedness. So I believe, all have a connection. And so I do. And in fact, one thing I'd like to do is like an experiment is to see if let's say I have a dream about somebody, would they have a dream about me? Just curiously, or would that ever correlate? I'm just kind of curious. Um, I remember having also a dream where I was leaving my body and there was kind of a purple light, and I just felt this like a warmth, like I want to go towards that purple light. And I remember hearing my wife saying, "Oh no, now he's going. He's going to leave us." And then there was this like a force field, and I hit the force field, and I couldn't go towards the light. And might that have been a hyperdimensional experience? Absolutely. I mean, again, as I said, our creativity, I believe, is infinite. I don't think it has limits. I even tell my students, don't be limited by your intelligence. Your intelligence is something you think you have. You have something more than you even know what you have in your ability to create and solve problems and feel the world. And so, I mean, yes, I do believe when we dream, especially some of the vivid dreams, I think that you may go into another world. Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I lost my brother many decades ago from a car accident. And I remember one time I had a dream with him. It was a beautiful day. It was sunny. There were leaves. We were driving in like a convertible Mustang, like a 1964 Mustang. And I remember he was talking to me and he was said, but Mike, that when you're going to do science, you got to do it for humanity. You got to do it to help the world. And I never forgot that message. I mean, he was right. I mean, and so, yeah, might that have been something delivered for me, from a different world? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I take all of this stuff seriously. Why shouldn't I?
Yeah, there has been recent research done with people with kids who have autism who really can't like speak, and they've done some recent research that the people kids who have autism basically can speak to each other telepathically. They can actually
I,
speak to each other. They can read like they did some like multiple like tests like kids like autistic kids living with their parents and everything, and these kids are actually like answering, but they can read their parents' thought. They are so connected to their mom and their dad and their sister. They can read their thoughts. They can read how they feel about their children, and they are able
yeah,
to like actually like communicate these thoughts and everything.
yeah,
So we never know that, like it's just like you said, we think, okay, I'm imaginative, like I have a good
right.
imagination, I'm so talented, but it's so much more like beyond that. We don't know, like as just as an individual, like what are we all capable of. And one of the things that really like is kind of like bugging me lately is that because with the amount of technology and the information that we are consuming, I feel like this energy, there is there's the soul energy, like what
Yes,
word you want to use. I feel like that is shrinking, this connectedness with your soul or your this divine energy or like whatever,
yes,
that is shrinking because we are now because we are being pulled into so many like different
yeah.
directions because we're constantly hooked to our phones and like consuming so much
Distraction.
crap and everything. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. If you look at Orthodox icons, one of the things that almost all of them have is they have a halo around the head of the saint. And I always wondered about that. I was like, did saints, really have halos around them? And then I explained it to myself in the following way. As I said, God is a perfect energy. He's love. He's just pure love. And so it's not the same as the energy we have in this universe, which you could actually define time based on just conversion of energy. And so that's kind of how I look at. So energy doesn't really convert in God's world, in my opinion, because it's perfect. It doesn't need to convert. So if you've ever had a situation where, let's say, like there's a pet that comes close to you and they just hang out with you, they follow you, they feel something that you can't articulate. I think that saints, that people that are good people, they have an energy about them, a spiritual energy that you can't see it, but it's like a halo. You can feel it.
Yes.
And that's why people would touch Jesus, would follow him. They felt that higher dimensional, infinitely dimensional love. And so I think that the problem is that again, from a physicist perspective, and I wrote an essay about this I'm happy to share with you. What is love from the perspective of a physicist? We interact with each other. And physics, we interact. There are four, like I said, four interaction mechanisms: electromagnetism, gravity, strong nuclear, weak nuclear. So for us, the main interaction is electromagnetic. And so if you think about that interaction, that means that there's forces. We when we talk, we're sharing energy, we're sharing acoustic energy. When you see me, you're seeing light that bounces off of me and then of course goes through the internet and all that. But there's an interaction. The problem is that God gave us a choice. We can either interact with him or we cannot interact with him. We can close ourselves off.
Right.
So how do we interact with them? We get this love. We pray. We connect with the Holy Spirit. When Jesus was alive on earth, we would touch him. We would worship him. We would, hang out with him, listen to him. That's a form of interaction. So the problem with the current state of our world, of our materialistic world, is we're focusing on the four dimensions. We're not focusing beyond. And that's the praying. And all, as far as I know, most human, religions all pray in some way, shape, or form. It's usually they're silent, their mind is engaged, and they're kind of disengaged with the four-dimensional world. And so the point is that when we stop that interaction, we're going to stop, that love stops coming from God. And I think we need that love, just like we need the sunlight to warm us every day, that energy. We need God's energy. And so we have a choice, which other particles don't have a choice. Particles in this universe just interact via those four forces that I mentioned. But we as humans that have something inside us that is transcends this universe,
Yeah.
we need to interact from that higher dimensional perspective. But that interaction is love. Because if you love God, God said, if you love me, you have to love all of me, all of my creation. We are part of God. It's just God gave us the freedom, the free will to choose. Do we want to stay with God? Or do we want to lose that connection with God? When we lose that connection with God, our soul kind of crumples from this higher, in my opinion, higher dimensional, infinitely dimensional connection to it just kind of shuts down. And then I don't know, then we're something that's not really human.
Recently I was thinking about something. I think fundamentally all of us are religious in some sense. Even people who call themselves like, see, when you're rejecting religion, that's up to like every single person. How much they want to attach themselves to Christianity or Islam or Hinduism or whatever. It's up to like every individual's like how much they want to connect with a particular religion.
Right.
But the thing is that I think fundamentally, I think it's just wired in us to be drawn towards some sort of energy. So when you say that I am gonna, I don't connect myself with Christianity or Hinduism or any other like popular religions that we have,
Sure.
and you're gonna say that I'm gonna become an atheist, so what happens next is that by calling yourself atheist, at some point you are going to attach yourself to something and treat that as your religion. It could be veganism, vegetarianism. It could be like, being a left or a right or a liberal. That is just you're being so attached to something where you're
Right.
willing to like defend yourself so much. with that
Communism.
particular bit. That is a religion as well. That is the whole religion is
Or
not just about,
capitalism.
yeah, exactly. So religion is not just Christianity, Hinduism, Islam. It's not just
Correct.
anything that you kind of feel that connect that energy, and then you're kind of so connected towards it, that becomes
Yeah.
a religion. And it's very unfortunate because some of those religions are not being played by good actors.
Correct.
Some of them they are bad actors. They don't have exactly the right intentions for you. So if you're not going to attach yourself to this religion as like Hinduism or Christianity, you're very likely going to attach yourself to gender, the gender,
Sure. Whatever. Yeah.
identity politics or something. So that becomes a religion.
DI.
You're not exactly non-religious. You've just chosen a different religion, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, let me just give you a perspective that if you look at most of the fundamental, religions, I mean, and I'm not talking about organized, I'm just saying if you look at what humans believe, one of the key things, we're herd creatures. I mean, we socialized, we kind of transitioned from the Neanderthals who were more isolated and self, and didn't connect. And now we're sort of social creatures. Okay. So that's what allowed us to take over the planet, essentially, is the fact that we could cooperate and help one another. The issue is this, that if you look at the morals, the mores, the social mores, do unto others as I would have done to you. Or even let's go to the 10 Commandments, okay? I can actually derive, and using this in a loose term, derive those 10 Commandments if you take a higher dimensional perspective that this world was created and that the creator of this world loves what he created. So the issue of, honor your mother and father. Okay, well, mother and father are raising you. And so you have to they've had more experience in the world about surviving. And so, listening to them makes sense. Thou shalt not kill. Again, if you're from a standpoint of a creator, why would you want to destroy your creation? It would make no logical sense. So thou shalt not kill. Don't kill other created beings, because all of us have this godlike quality with the small g. We have something inside us that came from God, from the creator, that is a gift. And so if you look at it that point of view, then you see, okay, that this is metaphysics. From a biological perspective, if you're looking at survival of the fittest, then it's fine. Go ahead, be cruel, slaughter, wipe out. You took over this, the Nazis took over Kiev, just wipe out, kill all the people that lived there, World War II. So, then genocide becomes acceptable. When the British invaded India and then had India, They wiped out thousands of people. There were rebellions. The Queen Rani Jhansi of India, she, led a mutiny against the British colonial rule. So, yeah, if you don't really believe in God, then we're not, these are subhumans. These people that are a little darker than, and then it becomes okay. Well, obviously from a creator's perspective, it's ridiculous. We're all have a unique miracle of life. We're all brothers and sisters, essentially. We really share, our DNA is very, very similar. We've just sort of diverged over some millennia, but I mean, we're basically the same creatures. We're humans.
Yeah.
And so then when you look at the danger of atheism, the danger of exactly what the isms that you were mentioning, the communism, the hyper capitalism, is that it takes us away from our true essence, which, the body is just a temple for what's really going on, our soul. And so you're sort of basically not allowing that soul to fly free, to have that freedom, to think, to love. And so that's the danger of these isms. And again, I'm not purporting to have all the answers, but I'm going to tell you one of the biggest problems of humanity is greed, is this selfishness, of this ability of humans to inflict pain and horror and slaughter on each other. That's wrong from any perspective. What happened in the tragedy of Gaza, the tragedy of October 7th in Israel, all of that murder of each other, that killing of each other, is just wrong. And again, to really get to the answer, why is it wrong, you have to go kind of outside of just traditional biology to realize that we're something that's far beyond our biology.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah. I have just one or two more things to ask about hyperdimension, then we can move to the next subject. One thing that I want to ask is that, so I have not read the Bible, but I have read like a couple of like chapters, which I found like curious. So one of the things that I came across is the chapter about like Moses in the burning bush, right?
Yes.
Wait, have you kind of like read across some of these stories about psychedelics? How psychedelics actually kind of because when you're in a deep psychedelic state, like for example with DMT or ayahuasca, like they actually enter it, kind of they start seeing beings and creatures and all these kind of things. And I all actually read like one of these records where during like a trial where they were like testing DMT with like these people. Apparently these beings actually spoke to these men saying, oh wow, now it's good, thank God you can like hear us and see us, because we've been like wanting to convey things to you, and it's good that you can hear us and see us. And so that's actually like another. So there are so many routes, like you say, creativity is like one thing. When you're dreaming, it's like you kind of like touch base on like that hyper dimensions. And I think psychedelics is also like one of those things, because a lot of ancient civilizations were deep into like psychedelic plants and everything, like again, like, right? Like one of the stories that I read about like Moses and the burning bush is that, so the burning bush, so when the bush is burning, he actually gets a glimpse of like God, and where God says how to like free the Israelites and stuff like that. So one of the theories that I read, again, there is no like solid evidence, at least from what I know. I don't know if there is a solid evidence, but that bush could actually be an acacia tree, which is actually a psychedelic plant. And so when the psychedelic plant was like burning, it kind of released the DMT, and that is how he had visions of like beings from other dimensions coming and like giving him guidance on like what to do and everything like that.
Well, that's a great comment. Let me just, and it's a little, it takes me a minute or two to answer that. But first off, I'm a physicist, and I love my intellectual freedom. So I've never taken the psychedelics. I will say I've done a number of interviews, and people have said, you need to take psychedelics. Okay, well, since I need every brain cell I can muster for my aging brain to do the physics, I would prefer not to do the psychedelics, only because they tend to be a little bit unpredictable. People don't know yet the amazing biochemistry of what they provoke. I probably will do them someday when I'm done and spent and everything. And then I just kind of want to see. I think what they do is they open up channels in the brain. I think, we can get into the sort of the physics of my theories of how the brain works. there actually was, I don't know if you saw, there was a second Popular Mechanics article that just came out about a month ago, and it kind of discusses my wave theories of the brain. So, what the psychedelics do is, I do believe, by opening channels, by basically freeing this brain wave that I would call, which is somewhat related to your spirit, your soul. Um, I think that then it's certainly possible that you can connect on higher levels. I have a friend. I'm not going to mention his name. He's a great guy. He's a veteran, and he had suffered greatly in many ways in Afghanistan and with his own personal life growing up. And so he did this ayahuasca treatment. And he said one of the things is exactly what you told me. There were entities that were talking to him, like trees or mushrooms, and he saw me too.
Oh,
I wasn't talking to him as far as I know in my dream, but I was in his dream. And it actually gave him, from what he told me, a resolution, a peace, an inner peace from his demons that were tormenting him from his early childhood and having his experience in Afghanistan. So again, I'm a physicist, I'm not a biochemist. I'm not going to support or not support those as valid treatments. I'm just going to say I don't know. I certainly would say that, there's no question in my mind that by opening channels, you can free yourself. Perhaps you may be able to resolve some of these issues. Um, but at the same time, we don't know enough about these drugs that I'm just a little bit hesitant myself to use them because, again, I love my job, I love the physics, and I love my imagination. I just don't want that to change until I'm ready for that to change, if that makes any sense.
mhm. Yeah. Oh, wait. You did not comment on the Moses and the burning bush.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. So, from my point of view, it's certainly possible what you said, but from what I understand in that story, the fire came, God spoke to Moses and said, "You need to do this." And then the fire disappeared and the bush was okay. So that to me is proof that whatever fire that Moses saw was a higher dimensional, fire. Okay. You had mentioned the concept of going to lower dimensions. Imagine if you're 10, 20, infinite dimensions, what God must look like. I can't even imagine. So you can't see God in his true glory until your soul, which I believe is higher dimensional, which is probably infinite dimensional, just like God. Now you're going to see what God really is. And that I don't even know where to begin as far as how amazing that must be. What based on the biblical account, that Moses saw a projection. So in other words, if you look at a sphere that's three dimensional and you take a slice, as is in this book, this story, Flatland, going through two dimensions, you just see a circle or just a disc. So God, if he's infinitely dimensional or certainly higher dimensional, you were seeing a projection of God in this four-dimensional world, which is not even close to what God is. But that's what God did because God couldn't Moses was still stuck in his three-dimensional body, four-dimensional body. So he saw this fire, but it just was a part of God. It was just a projection of God. And so could it have been? Yeah. I mean, I wasn't there. So 2000 plus years ago, but I mean, it certainly, or whatever it was, 2,500 or I forget, 3,000 years ago. But the point is, I wasn't there. So I don't know. All I'm trying to say is that there was an ascribed miracle. That was a miracle. The mind altering drugs are not. And so the point is that I have a physics explanation for how that miracle could have happened and not destroyed the tree after God left. And so it just jives. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it happened. I think it happened, but I'm not saying for sure. I don't know. I wasn't there. But the point is I can explain it from a physics perspective, higher dimensional physics perspective.
Have you pondered, like, let's say you are given all the funding that you need. Have you like do you have like a clue of like what kind of tests or experiments that you would like go, or what would be your focus of research in order to prove that there are higher dimensions?
Okay, great question. Now, of course, I have my own physics life, so I have uh, completely different research that I do as an experiment. I have a lab, I have experiment.
Yeah.
But if I were, let's say that there was a benefactor, or somehow somebody was, had a lot of money and say, you know what, I want to get Mike off the ground. I want to get him into this area. I would start with my theories of the brain. So yeah, if there was a benefactor and said, look, I'm going to give you this money. I want you to work with the top neurologists, neurophysicists. Yeah, I would do it. And what would I do? I would start with looking at, so I have a theory where, just as I had mentioned, the wave particle duality, and which is a very accepted philosophical point of view, that you can look at anything either as a wave or as a particle. It's quantum mechanical. De Broglie started this. I have said, if you look at a body as not an assemblage of particles, I'm talking cells, atoms, electrons, but look at them actually as an assemblage of waves. And those waves are interfering with one another in a very fascinating hologram. And if you just take a subset of those waves, we can go further, but you just say, well, just look at the electrical waves in the brain. And you see it as just don't even think about like particles. Just think about waves. I can explain many aspects of human behavior. I can explain sadness. I can explain autism, multiple personality syndrome, ADHD, um, creativity, and happiness. And so so that's something that if I were to start, I would start there. And then I would look at the dreaming. I would look at MRIs. I would do certain, I'm a spectroscopist, so I would look at waves that we receive every day. Schumann, Tesla waves. I would look at waves, far infrared waves, vibrational waves. I see the universe as sort of a symphony of waves. So I see everything as just a wave. Optical waves, electromagnetic waves, vibrational waves, sound waves. So if you, from that point of view, then I would start a field of science where I would connect with neuroscience using this approach to possibly solve human afflictions. Like could I help autistic people connect with the environment? Um, and I think, again, kind of related, because now we're kind of transitioning, but you had mentioned that, we were discussing the isolating ourselves. I think that we receive a spectrum of this symphony every day, every second. And I think that and that's why it's good to get out in nature. That's why we feel better when we're on a boat in the middle of a lake, or bicycling, on through or hiking in a mountain, or bicycling through a forest. So I think that those waves that we receive from nature, I think actually we need them because we evolved under those waves.
Yeah.
Insects chirping in the wind, birds chirping, insects flying around. All of that are waves that I think that make us healthy. And I think that when we separate ourselves, when we isolate ourselves from those waves, because we spend 10 hours a day in a cubicle, or we're attached at the hip to our phones, I think then we develop problems. And so I would go in that route, in terms of starting that research, demonstrating which waves are helping us. But why is music? Every human being that I know of loves music, whether it's the ancient sitar, or it's classical music, or even rap music. I think there's something that is part of that wave philosophy that we need. And it makes us feel happier when we have those waves. And so, yes, I would, if I had the money, I would just go out and I would just kind of just go focus on starting with the brain, starting with understanding brain as a receiver. Think of Tesla, what Tesla says, the receiver of all of these waves that we pick up from the earth when we're touching the grass, the wet grass, waves from lightning. All of this, I think, actually enhances us as human, and I think we need them.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I would go in that direction. as far as hyperdimensionality, well, I mean, again, that I would start looking at things like spooky action at a distance and maybe sort of looking at developing a. I mean, I have my own theories and I don't want to get too deeply into it right now because it's very complicated. And, I don't want to kind of give it away, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
for
I
sure.
mean,
But I mean, I don't know the physics or the math behind it. But I just like from my perspective, I think that's like a great idea to kind of like understand like when something happens that triggers a certain kind of emotion or sensitivity in us, like what wave is like triggered or why does that
Right.
particular way, how does it travel from like one sensitivity to another sensitivity, like from
Right.
skin to music or skin to doing some sort of like a work or something like that. And I think that kind of I think that's a great starting point when just like trying to understand with the materials and with the emotions that we have within our 3 to 4 dimensions, like how do these waves like travel between these different things. Then I think that is kind of like it would be like a great stepping stone to understand, okay, how far that wave can like stretch, like how far that wave can travel and everything. It's kind of like mapping, right? I again, just like one last point on the subject, like I remember reading about about all this, like people having like different experiences when taking psychedelics, seeing different beings and everything. One of the ideas that I read is that what some scientists are planning to do is actually to see if they can map the trajectory of this human be like getting an impression or a glimpse of another being. So how does that like that wave travel, like can be like it's just like a map that we have, like a physical map or a Google map that we have, like you go left or right or this, and then you kind of get to this particular neighborhood. Likewise, when you take a certain plant, okay, then you go to this particular facet of your brainwave, and then that takes you to this dimension or that dimension. So it's kind of they spoke about it like it's a possibility. So considering that, I think like what you are suggesting is kind of like a great stepping point, of like research. um I want to ask, are you into this theory of like wormholes? Like have you like looked into it, like the possibility? I mean, I know that one of my favorite films is Interstellar. I love Interstellar.
Me too.
It's my absolute like favorite. You can't like skip having goosebumps like watching that movie. But one of my most favorite scenes is when they actually get into a wormhole to go to a completely different solar system, like a completely different
Right.
universe. And like it's only through that I've had like a rough understanding of wormhole like very early, but only like in the last couple of years I've understood that wormhole cannot be, it's not like naturally produced or created. If a wormhole exists that allows you to travel from point A to point B, that means someone engineered that. That's the only way a wormhole can exist. Could you speak a bit about like your understanding of like wormhole, the possibility of it existing?
Sure. Sure. So let me give you an example. Okay. Let's say that I take a flat piece. Maybe I can here. Let's say that I take here's a flat piece of. So I have a piece of paper here. Okay. So I'm going to make 2 dots on that paper. You see the 2 dots?
Yep.
Okay. Now these two pieces are I'm going to draw a line between them. So this is what we would call two-dimensional Euclidean flat space. There's flat geometry. Okay. So if I want to travel, and I'll call one point A, and I'll call the other point B. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to flatten. I'm going to fold this piece of paper like this. Actually, I'll go the other way so you can see. So I have A on one side, and I have B on the other side. So now, if I want to go from A to B, I have 2 choices. I can go either the long way through this, connecting this line, or I can jump across this two-dimensional. Well, between the 2 dimensions, you can see a gap. I can jump between the gap. You understand? That's the wormhole. Okay. Now, I'm not like I said, I'm not even. I just took introduction to general relativity. I did not take anything beyond that. Um, so I can't really comment on how you make a wormhole. I will say this that in the presence of matter, uh, basically, Einstein said that space warps. So this is like a warping of space. So what was started out as flat, if you just can imagine three dimensions, we're just going down to sort of better imagine it. You can crinkle space, and then now you might have a wormhole. I think there's other things that may form wormholes, but again, it's kind of it's really metaphysical, and I'm not a theorist, so I'm probably not in the best position to talk about it. But the point is that we do know that matter does basically create these crinkles in space time, and of course, when you get to a situation where you have a lot of matter, then you can form a black hole. And so this is what happened.
You mean
For
what?
stellars, they went through a wormhole, but it was like a wormhole. Yeah, and so then they ended up into some other. But I think also at the near the end when, where he meets his daughter, I think there was something where it looked like he was going into a black hole, but it was like it was a worm. It was something that was not. The problem with going through a black hole is you get to a point of infinite density, you get crushed, and so there's been lots of, and this is what Kip Thorne and Chandrasekhar were kind of trying to hash out. Could there be something that might be quantum that is not a point of infinite singular density that could might maybe pass through this hole, and that would be like you said, like a wormhole. So, yeah, absolutely, it's possible. I mean, is there a possibility that someday we might be able to find a wormhole and that's somehow attached to a black hole or something, and then we can pass through it? Sure, why not? I can't say no. I mean, I just think at this moment in time, it's very challenging because we've barely gotten outside of our solar system. I mean, the Pioneer, and the Viking are going out, but we haven't even gone to the nearest star besides, our sun, Alpha Centauri, which is only 4.5 light years away. They think that the universe is something like more than 1 billion light years, possibly in diameter. So, I mean, did you ever see Contact?
I love the movie. I
Okay,
love
I
the
love it
movie.
too.
I
And I
every
love
time tell
Fantastic.
people like it's a perfect mix of science and religion, science and
Yes.
it's so
Yes.
that actually that movie is a perfect example of like how it can both play along well together, and you can't
Yes.
separate one from another. You need faith, you need belief, a strong belief in something higher to make science work, and stuff. It's one of my favorite movies. I recommend this movie to a lot of people, but it's super like it's quite old. A lot of people think
Yeah.
it's just it's going to be something dull and they don't watch. But if anybody is like when you're listening, please go watch Contact. It's an absolutely brilliant movie.
I absolutely loved Contact, and do you remember at the end where uh I think it was Jodie Foster, she goes through this like a wormhole or
Yeah.
something, like they make this machine. And then she goes in the machine, and then they're like, wait, like she thinks it was just, 15 minutes or something, but they're like, no, she was gone for 8 hours or something like something astonishing. And so, of course, I mean, we're only, like I said, we're only really beginning to understand, the mechanism of, uh, yeah, we're only beginning to understand the mechanism of this universe. And so are there tricks that we might be able to play that we could I don't want to say skirt the rules, but use the rules to our advantage? Absolutely. I mean, there's no question. But right now science is kind of being persecuted in the United States. So I don't, I'm worried about the future of science and the future of being able to do this. But if we can get over this and somehow get back to the realization that what made America great is science. Yeah, I certainly don't want to say that it's not possible that we might, but I believe that even in my imagination, I can access different worlds. I mean, I just have to be sufficiently focused. And I think that I love that. I love that I have an imagination. I love that sometimes, my wife will like, you're somewhere very far away, aren't you? Yeah, because I'm thinking about something. Yes. And I love the fact that I can do that. That for the first time, as far as we know, in the animal world, we could live with this side our mind, and I think that's a gift.
Yeah.
Not
By the way, like before I forget, I just wanted to say a couple of days back, I did read your article in Medium about love and the principles in the current state of things. It was like wonderful with a photo of your wife, uh, like in a beach.
that's why.
Yeah.
What you were dating?
How many years ago was that?
Oh gosh, we met in 1992. That was probably around 94, maybe 95, something like that. Yeah.
So at the time when Stephen Hawking was still alive, so this is something that I came across like probably 15 years back or something. There was like a documentary on Stephen Hawking's theories and everything. And one thing that he said is that I think it's exactly like what you said. Wherever there is matter, there is a possibility of like a wormhole like existing like all around us. He also said the same thing that there is like we can't like see it, it's not visible in our naked eyes, but there are like wormholes like all around us. We just have to find a way to harness it, like bring it together to kind of engineer it in such a way that and then in such a way where you can travel from point A to point B, basically. If do you entertain these ideas about like, let's say there are like super intelligent species because the universe is so vast, like I mean, if you have come across, have you obviously know like what Hubble Space Telescope or the James Webb Telescope is up to. Like more than a decade ago, it was at a time when Hubble Space Telescope was like going around space, taking pictures and sending it to NASA and everything. I don't know if you remember this, but this is one story that I will never forget till I die. It is such one of my favorite stories where Hubble Space Telescope was just like doing its job, going in space, like taking pictures and everything. And for like almost like 2 months or something, Hubble Space Telescope basically stopped itself, pointing its lens to this dark area in space in the sky, trying to pull in as much light as it possibly can, trying to like screw its lens as much as it possibly can, and finally it sends back a photograph to it sends back it clicks the photographs, and in this photograph it looks like when you see this image, it looks like there is like infinite, like billions or millions of like tiny 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 little stars. And after research, after like many months of research, like we kind of like had the understanding that every single one of those dots is like a complete galaxy, every single one of those dots. And within those galaxies, apparently there are like billions of planets and like trillions of stars. And apparently some of those planets are so huge, in our understanding of the physical universe, it's not possible to exist at all. They are like so huge. So it is impossible to think that we are the only intelligent species in the universe, that we are like the most intelligent, that we are the most capable. There are obviously planets so much more older than us, which means there is a possibility there are civilizations much more older than us. Do you kind of like entertain the possibility that maybe those civilizations must have figured interstellar travel through wormhole, or through their own concept of like however it is possible?
So Carl Sagan said it best. He said, if there is alien life, it may be offset by a billion or so years, which means it had a chance, relative to us. So it had a chance to develop technology, and therefore it probably would have come here, and we would know it came here. So he estimated, he said, but because we don't, at the time he said, I don't think we've had alien life, and I agree with him that's visited us. It's probably once a galaxy, because he was just looking at sort of what is the chance that, some life form could figure out how to do all the wormhole. Because if you're beyond the wormhole, I mean, it's incredibly challenging. Okay. I mean, to cover, you know what a light year is? It's the distance that light traveling at 186,000 miles per second travels in a year. So, and our nearest star is roughly 4.5 light years away. So we have to be traveling in the speed of light for 4.5 years to get to the nearest star. So it's unfathomable. Okay. The distances. Do I believe that life is an eigenstate of this universe? Absolutely. That, in other words, that this universe from time t equals 0, when the Big Bang happened, that our creator knew life was going to evolve. Absolutely. No question about it. I mean, I think it would be kind of sad if we were the only life form here. So, I mean, I know that they've found complex molecules in the interstellar medium, like ethanol, uh, or PACs, polyaromatic carbons. So, and of course, we're carbon based. Carbon is the skeleton of life, carbon and nitrogen. And, water is the solvent of life. Are there other possibilities? Yeah, sure, that there might have been polymers that formed out of other molecules, but it's most likely carbon. Carbon is kind of a fundamental. It's like everywhere because it's produced in our stars. Our star produces, our own star, our sun produces molecules pretty much up to oxygen. So these are all fundamental building blocks, and there is a whole field of physics called astrobiology, where basically, or science, where basically they believe that the Earth may have been seeded with complex molecules, such as amino acids and carbohydrates or sugars, and then over time, this soup kind of we're basically water is our solvent, so it's a solvent based chemistry mostly in the liquid state. And so, yeah, is it possible that there happened to be a planet that was just about the right size, and the right distance, one astronomical unit from another star that life may have ignited? Absolutely. I mean, from a creator perspective, I see this as a laboratory. I see the universe as a laboratory. He's testing out I mean, he has his own vision, but maybe he's also experimenting. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to get into the theology. I'm just kind of speaking as a physicist. And so, I would be surprised if there wasn't other life forms. Um, but as far as have those life forms visited here, I don't think so, because if they did, they would just take over the planet, most likely. And so we wouldn't be, we'd be, I mean, did you ever see, there's a famous Twilight Zone, and it's about, there's a Twilight Zone, and it's about, it's like, it's serving humans, which is the title. And there's this advanced, alien species that comes to Earth, and they pretend to be all benevolent. They show humans how to harness energy and make life easy. But then at the end of the film, they end up that there's a book that they give to the humans, and it says, and they translate it to serve humans. But then they realize it's not serving humans. It's as far as serving this greater species. It's actually about eating the humans. So I mean, I'm just being realistic, and so I think it's probably good that we haven't been visited. But of course, there will be people that will disagree and say, no, 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 we've been visited. Okay, fine, whatever. I mean, I don't think nothing's been proven as of yet. Um, but the point is, I would be surprised if there wasn't some sort of alien life forms. It's just that life is so precious and so unique. You know, our planets, other planets, Jupiter, Neptune, Uranus, Mars, they all had the chance for, billions of years and nothing happened. Basically, as far as we know, there's no life. There may have been life, and then it did, came and went. That may happen on this planet too, that life comes and goes. It still doesn't detract from the mystery. It doesn't detract from my opinion that this was all a synthesized world, the universe, in that allowed us to evolve and come about to kind of maybe ponder itself.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's kind of the short answer, or maybe a longer answer to your short question.
I kind of like want to get back into this alien UFO subject in a little bit. But before that, I kind of, because you brought up, talking about like how the creator created us and everything. So it's evident you believe in the idea that we were created. There is a creator, right? At least that is like your belief and thing. I also like personally like believe that there is a creator. I don't think I'm not like I in general I believe like we were just like put together here for I don't know like what. But I for sure I have a hard time grasping or like making sense in my mind that the purpose of us like existing here is that to do a job, to pay taxes, to wake up in the morning, complain about compl- complain about things in social media, and like just like fight among each other, to bomb each other and everything, and just like go to sleep and then wake up the next day and do the same thing. I cannot understand. Like we are living. We are again like this. We are this like tiny blue dot in a vast space, and we are such complex creatures. We do not have complete understanding of like why are we the way that we are. Where do our thoughts come from? Where do our ideas come from? And all these kind of things. And I can't just make sense. The whole purpose of like me is like I love whatever I'm doing, but it still doesn't like make sense to me that is why I'm here. I'm just here so that I can do this kind of things. I can pay taxes. I have to spend money. Do I feel like it's something bigger than that? Like our whole purpose is like something bigger than that.
Yeah.
Like yeah, and it goes beyond. I'm not just speaking about it's love, kindness. Yeah, these are all like facets of like what we can do. Love, anger, kindness, etc. These are all like different facets of like what we are able to do as human beings. But still that still doesn't completely give me the answer of like why are we here? Like what are we
Yeah.
doing here? So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I do. So let me. Okay. So first of all, let me give you this perspective. Um, uh, God gave us a world to inherit. So God is a creator, wants us to be creators just like He is. That's the godlike. Okay, we will never be God, but we are like His, under His tutelage. And and so the thing is that the problem is God had a world ready for us, this Garden of Eden, and it would have, been much more, I'm sure. But there was a sort of a test, and we failed the test. Okay, so we were tricked by this nefarious creature we call Satan or Lucifer, and so who was apparently one of God's second. This is sort of a biblical thing, second in command, and just was for whatever reason thought it was. I call it an it because it's such a loser that. But anyway, it sort of thought it was better than God, which is laughable. How can you be better than your creator? But this is where arrogance and lack of humility come in. And so what happens? We sort of listen to this thing, this beast, and we lost it. We lost that connection with God. So what happened? So think of inheriting a beautiful, machine like a Jaguar or a Lamborghini, beautiful machine, and it's working. Everything's perfect and your father gives it to you, says, look, I want you to enjoy this, but don't ever forget I made this for you. This is my love for you. I gave you this gift and don't forget me. And what happens? We drive it and we crash it. Okay. And we disobey our father and now it's kind of a wreck. So now I don't know if you ever saw the Beverly Hillbillies, but this is like now what became was a Lamborghini has now become like this Model T Ford old broken down vehicle. Okay. So what happened was we inherited this and we blew it. And so we lost it. So now whereas animals would listen to us, they would hang out with us, they were our best friends. Now we had to hunt animals. We have to make our own food. You know, uh, trees were giving us fruit. We probably didn't even need to eat animals. We were probably meant to just eat the fruit. It would gave us everything we needed, all the amino acids, whatever, but we blew it. And so now we had to, so now God kicked us out of this beautiful machine. And now we're like in sort of a broken machine. So the point is, there's nothing we can do. I was born in that machine. Okay. I'm now born in this broken universe, this world dominated by the uncertainty principle, but I've been given a last hope. I've been given this hope that I still have a connection with my Father, my God, the God, through my soul, through praying. And my goal is to get back to that state of grace. We call that grace, where God does everything, you have everything set for you. Okay. And God is training you to be a leader, to be the master of a universe, of a world, which now we call this our world now. And so the purpose will never be fulfilled as we're alive because we're in this broken down world. We have to go back to our Father to get back that world that we lost. And so what is our purpose? Our purpose is to realize that you have a choice. Okay. You can believe in fate. You can believe in um, survival of the fittest. You can believe in killing and being the top honcho in this little tiny blue marble, as you pointed out, in a tiny solar system with an ordinary star in the middle of nowhere. Okay. And you can be the top honcho. Did you ever read The Little Prince, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay. You can be your little prince
Yeah.
and you can have your beautiful flower and you can have, but you're never going to have what you could have had, what you should have had, what you were meant to have, which is to be the master of a universe
Yeah.
and to follow through like a son, a daughter of God, and to master, you know what I mean, and to love and to be part of that and to enjoy it and to fulfill God's will and to glorify God
Yeah.
because you are the representative. You are connected. You are the direct connection to your Father. And so the animals will go to you. They will serve you. They will, you know, like this whole universe unto itself. And so we lost that grace. So the goal is to get back into that grace.
Yeah.
Not for this world. This world is nothing. Okay. This world is a template. It's simply a laboratory for us to seek, to search, to struggle, to get back into that grace
Yeah.
so that we can be with the true creator, the true master, the Alpha, the Omega. I am that I am of not just this world, but of probably infinite worlds. So I think somebody mentioned, I think the St. Thomas Aquinas had mentioned something that like the whole universe that we know, even he understood, that is like a dot on this plane of this page of this book that I'm writing. When you get into the mathematics, it's all, you're comfortable with it. It's cool. It's not a big deal because your soul, your creativity transcends all the dots, all the books, all the universes. That's the consciousness.
Yeah.
Okay. But with consciousness comes conscience. Conscience is that connectivity to our creator to follow him, to follow Jesus, or, you know, that spiritual sense of following so that we get retrained to do what we were supposed to do. And that's be leaders. That's be godlike.
Yeah.
Has to love each other.
Like sometimes like lately, like I feel like, you know, the closer I look into like everything that is going on, I feel, because I feel like we are sleepwalking collectively, like we are all like sleepwalking. You know how like a couple of minutes back you just like mentioned that it's going to be impossible to figure out everything that to figure out every single answer that we have about the universe, about the purpose and everything. My biggest problem with the world right now is that like we have a very limited time, like you and I, or like all of us, we have like very limited time in this universe. Shouldn't every single one of us be investing our time, effort, thought, ideas, everything in figuring out the universe? Like why are we here? What is this planet all about? Who are our neighbors? Like how, like what's going on? It is such an import. It's the whole purpose of this, having this such a limited life, you know, living till like 100 or 120, or it's, that's all it go. It sound like the older you get, I guess it goes like very, time moves like very fast and everything.
It does.
Shouldn't you invest all that time? Shouldn't we collectively invest all the time in understanding our neighboring planets, our planets, like our relationship with plants and animals, like, you know, like enhancing our like collective conscience and all these kind of things? But it's so unbelievably, I don't even know what is a word. Instead, what we choose is that fight over pieces of land, fight over like who is superior over
100%.
another, whose belief is superior over another. We fight over these things to a point where we are killing each other. Like we've gone through it, and nobody collectively, there is, I don't see any movement where like, hey, wait a minute, like let's take a step back. Like what are we doing here? Like what's going on? Like where are we like heading if this is how like we move collectively? And with the enhancement of like tech and AI, where everybody is like glued to it, everybody is like attaching some sort of an emotion or feeling to a celebrity or a pop song or like whatever.
Yeah.
What is going on? Like, and
Yeah.
we are like, how the Egyptian says, like, as above, so below. We are not at all connected to above. Like, we are
Right.
scattered like everywhere.
Right. Right. So first of all, just I had meant to mention that when you said the as above, so below. There's a famous painting. I believe it's in the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican, which I think it was Michelangelo did it. And you have a man reaching out into the sky, and then you have God reaching below,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and they're not touching it, but they're trying to. Okay, so that's what God wants. That's the interaction. Okay, when we touch God, in it's figuratively, of course. Remember, God doesn't necessarily have hands. He didn't make the universe out of, you know, who are we to tell God how to create the universe? Okay, so he did what he did. I don't know how he did it, but he did it. Okay, I mean I have ideas, but with the Big Bang and everything, but so he's creating. He wants us to create too, because that glorifies him. Because if you think of a great painter, and the great painter like Michelangelo or whatever, or Van Gogh, and he trains you, that's a great feeling. Like as a professor, I train future generations of scientists, and so that's what teachers do. Jesus was a teacher. Jesus taught us, okay, how to live. So that's what God is doing. God is teaching it. It's just that He's teaching us. It's hard to learn from the fire. Okay, so He gave us Jesus to kind of give us an example, somebody we could touch, somebody we could talk to, that we could. I'm not saying you can't talk to God necessarily. I mean, you try to when you pray, but the point is something that was more tangible within this four-dimensional space-time universe. And so, that's a beautiful thing. And so the problem is that we've just become more selfish. Satan has brought us against each other. And I agree. If we would, as humans, if we would be look into the barrel of a telescope instead of look into the barrel of a gun to shoot one another, the world would be in a much better off place. I mean, if people were asking the questions that you and I are talking about and discussing together, if more people did this, I think people would be happier. Honestly, I think, because it would give us a better sense of our purpose. My purpose is not to get a better car to beat out my neighbor. My neighbor's already beat me out with better cars. I don't care about that. The purpose is to become one with one another and with God. That's what I mean. And again, I don't need to, get too much into the Orthodox Christian, but a cross is like God's love comes from top to bottom, from Him to humanity, and then we share that love. That's this.
Really?
So
Is that the meaning?
that's my idea, and I brought it up in a number of Orthodox Christian conversations, and I did hear it from, I believe it was a bishop was talking about it in the same sense. So yes, I would say that from my point of view, that's the meaning of the cross, is that God gives us His energy, His love. We share that love with one another, and it's so beautiful for me because that's really what we have to do. And so I'm not saying people need to starve. But the point is, if you see a neighbor that is starving, help that neighbor. Give him some, make him a meal, or you know what I mean? Or there's a family that, the children can't get shoes. Buy them some shoes, pay it forward. We all have blessings. And so, and I'm not, believe me, I'm not perfect either. I mean, but, wherever you can, just share the love, just share your blessings. And it's not going to necessarily be anything off your, that is any sacrifice. But the point is that you can make such a difference. And we don't know what difference we will make, but I can promise you every single one of us will make a positive difference if we want to.
Yeah.
How it happens, I don't know. That's in God's infinite mystery. But, just the littlest things sometimes, like have you ever been into a room of people that are they're all stressed out, and you smile and you say hello? And it starts to catch. I've watched where like people like goodness will actually kind of spread. If it's like that little match or light candle in the darkness. When everything's dark, even the faintest candle can be seen by pretty much everybody. And so I see the unit right now. Unfortunately, our world is kind of getting darker and colder and lonelier. But if you can just try to spread that happiness, spread that love, spread that cheer, spread that energy from God, I think it will do wonders to maybe impact people.
Energy is the really energy is a real thing, and also like how our thoughts affect our thoughts really affect how we move physically, and our thoughts kind of like also the way, because and when our thoughts affect us negatively, when we are bombarded with like negative energy and negative thoughts and everything, it not just affects our body, but it also affects the people standing nearby as well. And it's the vice versa. When you're like have that good positive uplifting energy, it kind of like spreads. It's very easily, it kind of like latches onto like other people around you. Is it? Yeah.
Like when people say pray for me, I think praying for people does help. When I'm not saying it always works, but they've demonstrated, and this is something I would also want to investigate, is that prayer actually helps people. That believing in something, not yourself, when you're going through tough times, I think it does help people. Also, kind of just coming back to what your comment about, what can we do and everything. There are communities of people that like monks and nuns and in other religions, I'm not an expert on other religions, but there are monks, in Buddhism, for example, and so they are communities that live together, that pray together. And they all similarly pray. When you look at human beings, there's a very similar way that people pray, and, closing their eyes, shutting out the distractions of the physical world, and just kind of holding themselves and trying to receive, some blessing or share a blessing. And so I think that, I mean, there's a community called Mount Athos where Orthodox monks, get together and they just pray every day. And I'm not saying that, we should do that necessarily. I mean, I think for some people that's their calling and God bless them. But I just think thinking about other people, thinking about your blessings, thinking about trying to make the world a little bit of a better place, I think that can go a long way in terms of making the world a better place. Knowledge is, you were saying science, there's nothing wrong with science, but Tesla said it right. He said, science that is not in the spirit of bettering humanity is not science. And so there are people, unfortunately, that, knowledge can, and this is what Adam learned the hard way, Adam and Eve, is that, you can gain knowledge, but if you don't use it properly, God is not going to be happy. God wants to give us his knowledge, but we have to be ready for it. We have to be, God is not against intellectualism. He is not against learning, but you're never going to debate God. Okay, God, he has the knowledge. Either we will be humble and we will receive that knowledge in a humble way, and God will slowly give it to us when we're ready for it. But at the time of Adam and Eve, they were too immature. They weren't ready for what is good and evil. And so they weren't prepared for it. And so what happened is they got this knowledge prematurely, and then God was upset, and then they got thrown out of the Garden of Eden. The same thing happens where people create biological weapons. That's wrong from a science perspective. Gain of function research, out. That should not be funded, in my opinion. And look at what happened. 50 plus million people died because of that gain of function research, or are believed to have died because of that. And so, I mean, as a scientist, one of the reasons I like to speak out like this is because I want to explain, as a scientist, that doesn't get you off the hook for morality, in my opinion. You're funded by human beings who don't want gain of function research. They want research that's going to help humanity. And so as people who are funded by human beings, we should always have that in the back of our mind. Are we making the world a better place? Or are we just giving the elites an opportunity, these oligarchs, to destroy humanity and then enslave it because of these tools that we're making for them? Yeah. So, I mean, I want to be very clear that science, that's one of the reasons science is suffering right now, is because unfortunately, most scientists are very decent people. They're hard workers. They love what they're doing. But at the same time, there are those who have become political scientists, who took over scientific institutions or are responsible for funding. And they're not funding things that are really going to be good for humanity. They're funding things that are going to end up destroying humanity. So that's something that scientists need to have a dialogue amongst each other and amongst the people who support them, what are we going to do? How are we going to make the world a better place? And that was Tesla. And so I always look to Tesla when I think of what am I doing that's going to make the world better? Because I don't want to make something that's going to be ending up going into the wrong hands and then making, enslaving people or destroying humanity.
Yeah. Tesla, talking about Tesla, like when he said science needs to be science, the whole purpose of science should be to like, move humanity forward. And the one word that you mentioned, like an hour ago, greed. That greed and the elites are like, these are like, that's the main source that basically took him out. They literally like drove him like to a bankruptcy, and like he died as if he had nothing. But oh my God, like, and one of the things that you were talking about, like science, it's in science education.
Yeah.
So many of these institutions are infiltrated by politics, basically. Everything is,
science.
yeah, everything is political right now. Science is political, education is political, water is political, food is political, climate is political, everything is political. You can't, and the things that as a civilization, as a species, we all have to agree that we all want to be in good health. We all want to be in good health. But the fact that they used science to split people apart, that, hey, this research is wrong, this research is right. We are so separated, even in terms of health. But the point is that we should all be on the same page when it comes to health. But because science is infiltrated with money, with bad actors and money and greed and power and control and politics, we are separated even in that. We are separated even in terms of food. What is healthy? What is not healthy? How should we eat? Everything. But it's crazy. But you know what? But this is what worries me. It's gone too far because we are more divided than ever right now.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember like 5 years back or something, I really thought, wait, I think there is a chance we could get better. We could get better. But now looking at the current state of things, just how divided we are, like
Yes.
people don't see eye to eye anymore. People don't
Right.
see eye to eye anymore because if you say something that I don't agree with, apparently I can't tolerate it. Like you're offending, everybody is offended by
Right.
something. I was born in the 90s. Like I remember people used to have different opinions and we would still be friends. We would still like talk and we would still go eat food together. But
Right.
now it's
That's
not
right.
like that. You don't break bread with somebody you don't agree with. It's what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's tragic. And,
Yeah.
and I mean, I just, I mean, the point is that, if you can't, the whole essence of science is debate. So when there were scientists that were saying, look, or doctors, I mean, they're doctors or scientists, they're more technical, like technicians, but they're doctors, they're scientists. And so they were treating people with certain drugs. And again, I'm not going to get into, what the benefits of hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin. But the point is, if they have data, they should share the data. Okay. And then other people share it, they discuss it. And then you come up with, like at a conference, people come up with sort of a general consensus. That's how science moves forward. But when you start saying, oh, I'm going to fire these doctors who treated somebody with hydroxychloroquine, or I'm going to be a pharmacist and I'm going to actually prevent a patient from getting this drug or some other drug because I don't believe what their doctor who prescribed it has said, because I've been told by the higher ups in my agencies or the National Institute of Health or the CDC that this should not be allowed. That's barbaric. That's not science. That's evil politics. And so that's something that is fundamentally wrong. You should always allow scientists to speak out. You can challenge them, you can debate them, you can disagree with them, but let them, if they have data, don't ever censor that data. And so that's the tragedy of why science, and now I hate to say it, but we're kind of going into the Middle Ages right now, is that science was basically hijacked by money, by these non-scientists, these scientifically illiterates, which are 99% of Washington, D.C., these so-called leaders. They hijacked it for their own aims, whether it was, let's deny climate change, or let's, create these super biotoxins or whatever, or these weapons of war. I mean, that's what happened. Is it just got hijacked, and now people, they don't know whom to believe. Well, that's sad because science, the whole essence, it's not about believing or whatever. Science is what it is. It's empirical. It's based on data. You take data, you can interpret the data, you can misinterpret the data, and you may not even take the data correctly. But that's why science always works itself out. Ultimately, in the wash, you get closer and closer to the truth, just like Zeno's paradox. But what happened now is science is been hijacked by all sides of this political spectrum. And then, as you pointed out, we've been polarized, and so now it's us versus them. And so, in the past, when I was growing up, I mean, yeah, okay, if the presidential candidate who won you didn't like, there was another. You could wait in 4 years. Like it wasn't an existential crisis, but now it's like it's become this existential crisis for both sides of the political aisle, and they're not talking to each other. They're not discussing. They're just they're holding our whole country hostage essentially while this tragic political game of football and tackle and whatever is going on. And the world is suffering, actually. I mean, the whole world is suffering because of the economies and tariffs and all this stuff. So, I mean, again, I'm not, I assume you don't want to get too into that, but you did mention, about science and, how can we be better? And the way we get better is we have to start from the right foot, start from the foot that, as Tesla said, we need to help humanity. We need to make the world a better place, not just conquer, this part of the world and kill all these people. We need to do something more benevolent, something that's more, because the biggest tragedy, and there's a famous saying, I think it was Stephen Jay Gould, where he said, I'm not worried about studying the convolutions and folds in Einstein's brain. I'm more worried about how many people that could have been like Einstein, could have, changed the world like Einstein, will never get the chance, never got the chance because of, the current state of humanity. And I agree with that. I think every single human being is a gift to this world, to the universe, to the universes. And I think that when you suppress human potential, I think we all suffer. How many Teslas might have been born since, in the ensuing 150 years or so that since Tesla was born, that might have changed the world like he did, but never got the chance because they were born in some impoverished farm in the middle, in some third world country, and never got the chance to learn science, like Ramanujan, or, there are many stories. Even somebody sent me a story of Enrico Fermi. His father was working for the railroad. They were like low middle class. I mean, but he found these books and he got fascinated, these Latin old books on physics from the 1850s. And he taught himself, and I think Ramanujan also taught himself math. Carl Friedrich Gauss, his father was a bricklayer. I mean, it was a noble that saw his potential and then funded him. So how many people have existed in the whole 200,000 plus years of human existence that might have really made a difference? They had some invention, some way of thinking, but they never got the chance. That's what I'm more concerned about. We should always try, and I think that's what heaven is. I'll be honest with you. Heaven is where every single human potential is maximized. I'm going to define it that way. That's what heaven is. And so in this world, most people do not realize, myself included, and I'm lucky, believe me, but do not realize their maximum potential. And so that's what we should strive for as the human race, that every child receives an excellent education, receives love, receives guidance, and let them grow, let them try and find their way and help humanity. That's what we should strive for.
Yeah, for sure. You were like when you were just telling about how many kids do not even get the opportunity. Like lately, like with everything that's going on in the world in the last couple of years, especially, I've realized the reason I'm here doing what I'm doing is literally luck. It's
Yeah.
nothing. I did nothing to be born to the right set of parents at the right time in history, in a country at the time when there was no war or famine or anything as such. And they had the ability to give me an education and all these kind of things. I literally like earned nothing like in this life. Yeah, I do something to like, given the opportunity, I do something to like progress forward, but just to be born, I had like nothing. What did the kids who are who are like being bombed in like so many other places in the world, like what did they do? What did they do to actually deserve it? It's literally a matter of like, it's literally a small slip in luck, and I could have ended up on the wrong side of the world, and suffering
Completely
the same
understand.
thing. It's such
Yes.
it's a humbling and a scary and a strange thing to realize that, wow,
Yeah.
literally the only reason I have access to clean food and water is luck, nothing else,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah, no, the same thing happened to my father. My grandfathers were immigrants from the former Yugoslavia, and my dad was born and raised in Canada. And his father, my grandfather, started out as a miner and then worked, farmed as a farm hand. And then he worked as a blacksmith and in the Steel Company of Canada in Hamilton. And my dad told me the story when he was in junior high school. So I don't know, he was what, 12 or 11 or something. And he spoke with a guidance counselor. And the guidance counselor said, "You're going to go to so called Hamilton Votech or something because you're going to be like your father, right? You're going to be a blacksmith." And my father said, "No, I want to learn science. I want to go to college." And so, despite the reservations of his guidance counselor, he went to Delta Secondary in Hamilton, which is a college preparatory school. And my dad eventually pursued chemistry and education, and then he became a professor of chemistry. So, I mean, even that, where he was a 12-year-old, 11-year-old kid, and he had to make a decision for himself that he wanted to go to college, that changed his life completely. I remember a period of time when I was in high school and I was immature and I was, going through puberty and I was a freshman and I was taking geometry, advanced geometry, and I couldn't understand like what was a point, what was a line. It made no sense. How could you draw a line that has infinitesimal thinness and you still call it a line? And I was flunking geometry and at some point, the guidance counselor called me in and said, "Well, maybe you should, like drop out of geometry and go into the average math." And my dad and I talked about it, and he's like, "Well, Mike, if you don't think you can handle it, but he knew me, and I said, "No, I want to learn this stuff." So I spent a weekend with my dad, and we just we did problems together. And can you imagine? I went from an F on the prior test to I take this next test, which was geometric proofs, which is probably the hardest part of geometry. I got 100%.
Mm.
So it was literally a one weekend where my dad said, "Look, Michael, you got to eat the humble pie. Let's work on these problems and let's see if you can get it." And then it all made sense. And so if I had not had my dad, I probably wouldn't be a physicist at this point because I never would have figured out I never would have gotten this concept of geometry and of course geometry, that's that's the building block of physics. So, I mean, sometimes you're absolutely right. It depends on who you grew up, who are your parents, where did you grow up, what opportunities did you have? So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And look, I feel that every day. I do, despite the fact that I feel that I have much more to offer. I feel very lucky, where I'm at. I'm in a position where I love my job. No day is the same as the next for me. I get to be creative. I get to, do all sorts of. So, I mean, I feel blessed, but I feel bad for how many other students, or people never even got a chance to be a student. So, as a professor, I feel a duty
Yeah.
to train the next generations. I feel a gratitude from the earlier generations and a duty, just like that concept Isaac Newton said, I'm merely standing on the shoulders of giants. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
And I want to help the next generation
Yeah.
because that's what goes with humanity is we are all continuous survivors. Every single human being alive today is the product of survivors,
Yeah.
of continuous lineage of survivors. And that should be a matter of respect for every human, every race, every culture. We're all survivors. And that's a
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah, and I think that is a great reminder. Like, this is one of the biggest reasons why you have to live to your fullest potential, like max out on your potential, max out on the goodness, because not everybody has a chance that you have like right now, just to like have this life, to have a home, to have like access to food and water. So do the best that you can in like whatever it is that you're doing, or be the best person that you can, like, be the good person that you can. One last thing that I want to say regarding, you were talking about like science and like vaccines and like hydrocolloic and all these kind of things. In my opinion, I thought a lot about it, and I think like this whole COVID, this is why cancel culture is so dangerous. When I don't agree with you, then if I don't agree with professor, like, hey, like cancel him, like, because I don't agree with like what he's saying, and I find him offensive. That's not the way. You can't possibly think of creating a society where everybody believes in like one thing. If you it's a very dangerous pursuit. Actually, it's a very dangerous pursuit, because that is slowly leading to totalitarian. People are thinking that's because I have the freedom to cancel you. That is actually not a freedom, because there could be because 1 year later, whoever is in control can enable another person saying that, hey, now cancel Priyanka because she said something that you don't agree with. The loop goes on till we all have no other option but to agree to like one thing, and that is a very dangerous thing, basically. Yeah. COVID, like, in my opinion, was like a great example of like, in my opinion, the entire COVID was an experiment. Really, it was an experiment of, yes, like, will the globe obey us or not? Because did you see, we all stayed in at the time when they asked us to stay in. We all got out at the time when they asked us to like get out. We all ate the food that they told us to like eat. We all took the amount of vaccines that they said, if two, yeah, okay, we took two. They tell us, no, you have to take three. Then we took three. Yeah. They told you can go to McDonald's, but don't try this. You don't need sun, just stay indoors. When sun is such a natural healing resource, yes, what a comedy it is that they said, no, you have to like stay inside. When being physically active, right? Yeah. Oh my God. And the fact that we all believed for a period of time, we all like blindly like believed, bought into that story. It's almost painfully tragic, honestly.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah. During the pandemic, I mean, I have 3 kids, so I knew there's no way that this is going to work out well for them if they're, sequestered in a house. We have a pretty nice house, so they would have friends come over. But I said, look, you guys can be in the backyard, mask if you're inside, and somebody's sick, don't come over. Nobody got sick. Everything. I had my lab working during the COVID. Same thing. Mask when we're close to each other. If you're sick, don't come in. Wash your hands. Do things that my mother taught me as a nurse when I was 4 years old. How do you wash your hands? How do you not cough in people's faces? I even did a little video. I demonstrated the power of wearing a mask. And, I mean, again, I'm not, I mean, I wear a mask as a scientist because, I mean, surgeons do, okay? But this thing of, do we wear a mask? Do we not? This was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. So, and then I remember asking a bunch of doctors, if I take something that is an inflammatory, like hydroxychloroquine, like Tylenol, like, ibuprofen, would that possibly help to reduce inflammation in my lungs and therefore all of this fluids that people were drowning, that they were dying? Most people didn't die from the COVID. They died from the inflammatory response to COVID. So if you just take something that reduces the inflammatory response, would that help? Well, they all agreed with me. And guess what? I probably had it too. I took a bunch of Tylenol and ibuprofen, and it was fine. I got over it. I mean, so the thing is that the tragedy here is that you had nefarious interests that were pushing for this control. It was really an issue of control, in my opinion, of society. And so they were freaking people out with all this terrible pandemic, etc. And so what they were doing is they were sort of hiding behind science, but it was really pseudoscience because again, they were censoring people who were publishing studies that were showing other alternative treatments beyond their untested vaccine, okay, which was never done before. Even the inventor of this technique with messenger RNA said, don't do this. This is not what my technique was supposed to be used for. So they're using this kind of evil or just untested technique that might have changed the genotype of humans. We don't know. Okay, we're still finding that out. So the point is, that was horrible. Okay. Instead of other people were saying, look, I'm going to go out, I'm going to go with fresh air. Fresh air is oxygen. Oxygen is very oxidative. Obviously, it's great for treating, people who would get, like pneumonia. Typically, they're not going outside. They're not getting fresh air. That's why we used to have these, places where people would go to kind of just get treatment, just to go out in the fresh air. And remember what I said about my wave theory, getting the sunshine, getting the natural waves, all of that is healing. But what do they want us to? They want us locked, inside our homes and even not even talking to each other. And it's horrible. It was so non-science, in my opinion, what had
The
happened.
the amount of cases with people with mental illness, depression, and loneliness, suicide cases. This is all what that is another form of polarization and everything.
I know people that
From
went
that
to hospitals
onwards, people
because of
became
this.
more quiet. People stopped talking to each other, engaging with each other because of now, because then there's a thing anti-vax, vax. So there is always like this polarization. Whatever it is, there is two.
Right. Well, yeah, by the way, let me just say, I'm not anti-vax. I'm anti this vax.
Yes, me too. Like
Okay,
whole thing. Yeah,
too experimental.
yeah, for sure. Like, because also this thing, you just like mentioned, these vaccines that we are putting inside, this goes into our bloodstream, our like veins. I think it's forever changes our immune system. Forever,
It does.
forever.
Yeah.
People like don't like realize that this is not like you put. It's not like taking paracetamol or something where you take a paracetamol after you drink a lot of water and you like go to the bathroom. It's probably gonna flush it out. Vaccines are not like that. Once it's in your body, it is in your body, permanently changing your system. We don't know what way. We don't know. I don't know in what way.
We're still studying. Yeah. Well, this mRNA, I think, was a bad idea, and I think we're going to be dealing with the
Yes,
consequences.
but sir, like one of the things that I really find very unsettling, if you remember, someone who was advising the entire world about vaccines at that point when it would happen was Bill Gates. It,
Yeah.
it,
Who's not a scientist?
a guy.
He's a college dropout, and he's going to
Literally,
be the.
you're geek. You're a geek writing software code. Suddenly, you are the advisor for the entire planet on what vaccine to take,
That's right.
times we should get jabbed. Nobody questioned that. Nobody questioned that. That's because for years he has been labeling, creating this illusion that he's a philanthropist. He's a philanthropist,
Right.
and now
But he's not a scientist in any sense. He's a dropout. And so the thing is, the tragedy of this, people did speak out about it, but they got censored by big tech. Okay, so again, you didn't hear. This is the problem. You were talking about authoritarianism. It's here. Okay, Big Brother is always watching us, and big tech controls, basically spins the stories, suppresses anything dissent, and sadly, many people were hoping this was going to go away with the current administration, but now it seems to even be doubled down. It's even worse with the cancel culture, the oscillations of power. And the thing is, probably the biggest tragedy is the vast majority of these oligarchs are not really educated. They're poorly the way they got to the top wasn't through education. It was through, like you said, fate, who they were born, luck, and viciousness. Okay, stealing from others, stealing ideas. Bill Gates, I mean, he bought the operating system for his garbage Microsoft Word for like $50,000. I'm sure the guy who sold it regrets that for the rest of his life. But he took an operating system that had been developed and then basically through his connections managed to get it to take off. And now it's basically like a monopoly. I mean, the Microsoft Word is so garbage, you have to renew licenses. I never grew up with this. Whenever we had programs, you kept them for life. You didn't have to renew a license. You had a program, you bought it. But now, no. You got to get upgraded. Windows 11, 2000, whatever. And so this is all about control, and it's suppression. Your computers, even though they're faster today than they ever were, they're spying on you. A lot of that speed is just so it can spy on you and give you all this garbage advertisements and sort of correlate, do AI on you. What do you want to buy? What do you sort of trick you into parting with your money. And so it's just tragic. It's like the science was not really used for the betterment of humanity. It's being used to control and destroy humanity.
Yeah. People don't recognize how much money and power is involved in these kind of projects, like the vaccines, the identity politics that you were like telling about, the identity politics. There is literally like money, there's medicine involved in that as well. Like in all this transitional medicines, everything, there's a lot of money involved, there's a lot of control involved. Did you see
Tragic.
it's so tragic. In UK now they're planning to roll out digital IDs and everything, which like we are going there, we are going towards like a civilization that's constantly surveilled. It's
Yeah, they constantly surveil Big Brother, and then they're gonna and everybody, everything's digital garbage currency, fake virtual money, dollars printed out of nothing, or euros or whatever. And then the thing is, then they can shut you up anytime. They like what they did, the tragedy in Canada. These truckers who were protesting, they literally shut their bank accounts, stole their money. I mean, it was barbaric. I mean, like like you have no freedom, no rights at all as a citizen of the world today. And I think that's right now where there's going to be, there's a revolution kind of brewing where people are going to overthrow this tyranny of technology. And unfortunately, remember, let me just be clear. Science is science. Science is not, politics. It's about the natural world. We are part of the natural world, whether we like it or not. Yes, we have figured out ways to harness the natural world, but you will never control all of nature. We are not God. We did not make the cell. Nobody has ever invented a cell. That's the most complex machine we have going that we know of in this universe. We've modified the cell, we've tinkered with genetics, but that's not the same thing as making life. And and I don't think we're ever going to quite get to that level, because I think there's deeper hyperdimensional things that drive life and whatnot. But the point is that it's that arrogance that we think, instead of saying, wow, look at this amazing thing, the cell, something that's less than a micron, that femtosecond chemistry is going on, every femtosecond, and instead of being awed by that, just like being awed by the Lamborghini we were supposed to inherit, we thought we could drive it ourselves without help from our creator who made it for us, and without his guidance, and we crashed it and we wrecked it. And that's what we're doing with life on this planet, in a sense, is there are people trying to wreck the human genome. And that's sad.
I have only 20 more minutes of your time, so I want to touch on like a few more things.
Let's go for it.
So the next thing that I want to ask you is about, so you are you born and brought up in Las Vegas, Nevada?
I was born in Chicago and I live in Las Vegas. Yeah. In Henderson, Nevada, which is a suburb. I'm sorry?
It's been in Las Vegas.
About 22 years, 22 and a half years.
Okay, because I kind of like, well, I don't know, I assumed that maybe you were like born there or something, and I kind of wanted to ask the subject. So bringing back a little bit into extraterrestrials and UFO and everything. Las Vegas Nevada is basically a popular place. But there's Area 51 over there, like just in the last 20 years or something. Like, have you had like indulged in conversations about this, about the Roswell incident that happened in Area 51, or like, because it's a military zone, it's like a guarded site. Have you like been somewhere close there? Have you heard of people say something?
Well, I was recently interviewed by one of the people that broke a lot of those stories on UFOs. His name is George Knapp. He's a local journalist and an author.
Really? He's the one who helped Bob Lazar basically.
Yeah, oh my God. I'm going to send this, when this comes out, I'm sending it to George, because George said, we did an hour and a half interview. He went to my lab, and he says he's going to post it. So I'll let you know. This was a couple of months ago, but he had some health issues and he's come back. But I didn't know who he was, to be fair, and I apologize if when he sees this. But I've met a number of people like, oh, George Knapp. So I guess he's a big thing. So he and I talked about this. Okay, so of course Area 51 does come up. I'm not gonna. I don't know enough about it. I know that it's a restricted area, so I've never been. I've been near there, but I've been to the Nevada test site, for example. But I've actually never been to the Area 51. It's it's very popular in the local lore.
Mm.
There's a lot of like stickers, knickknacks like refrigerator magnets. People sell. There's stores that'll focus on alien like knickknacks. And so, yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, this is a fascinating state. My youngest son was born in Henderson, and I love living here. And a lot of people love visiting. It's amazing that I used to live in Las Vegas, New Mexico, which is a very small town near Santa Fe. And in 2 months living here in the real Las Vegas, more people visited me than in 2 years in the other Las Vegas. So I think it gives a perspective of just the tourism and all the strange things that have gone on here.
Have you, but wait, so you personally, you've never in your life so far have had any kind of experience that's like, wait, what the hell is that? Like, have you never had anything like that?
Oh, I always do as a scientist when I do experiments. I mean, I'd say probably every experiment, there's something that goes on that I don't understand. I mean, but do I see like shooting stars? Of course. I mean,
Okay.
have I been to the Grand Canyon and seen the wonders, one of the wonders of the world? Of course. I mean, but as far as, when I fly, do I see interesting things in the air? Sometimes, but I'm going to tell you that with the physics, I almost always find an explanation that it's like it's some shimmer, from a lake, or oh, that's some sort of a strange.
I have like some stories and things, but the thing is that with Bob Lazar, I mean, like I've always had this fascination with extraterrestrials, and like because it's not just a fascination; it's just that a possibility. It's impossible for me to think that we are the only ones here. So there's I can't ignore the possibility that there is a higher intelligence there. There are civilizations. There are like
Or different intelligence.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so Bob Lazar's story, if you have not looked into it, like I would really recommend.
I
Yeah.
I can't get into the details, but there's another connection that I'm not supposed to say anything, but with Bob Lazar. And I've never met the guy, but George Knapp, when he came to my lab with his crew, we talked about Bob Lazar. And yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, okay, sure, I understand. Like, but it's great. It's great now that now you should know who George Knapp is, and he's like amazing because when Bob Lazar was working in Area 51 in this base like called S4, he was basically put in a project where they were reverse engineering a spacecraft, and when he was about to when he found out, wait, something fishy is going on because this is not our technology. Like, where did this technology come from? And when he started asking questions and everything, basically they kind of like removed him out, and and George Knapp was the one who helped break the story out into the world. And there are just like so many fascinating things like from Bob Lazar. And you know what, like personally I have heard, personally, I'm not like with actually people that I know in my life, I've had some people share their stories. I'm not kidding, there's so much connection between what Bob Lazar said, I don't know what, 30 years, 50 years back, and what my friend told me like last month or something. It's crazy.
Well, I can't say anything except I'll just say this. I did collaborate with Los Alamos for a number of years.
Amazing.
And I will say there is definitely technology, not that I even know it, but necessarily, but there is technology that most people just don't know about that is not out there. Tesla had many ideas. I think to this day, there are people somewhere in some isolated bunker testing his ideas out to this very day. And what is the result? Are there weather changes? The weather certainly possible. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Talking about like hyper dimensions and all these kind of things. How people make these claims about, when we are playing video games, for example, you are playing a video game,
Yep.
and then in the game, in the screen, you will see suddenly like a bird flying in, and then the bird flying out. There is like something happening in the sky, or somebody jumping in when the character is like moving, and then and this particular
Yes.
character like moves out. It's very, if you think about it, like whenever people spot things like this in the sky, like I don't know, like an anomaly, a spaceship, UFO, like whatever, it just like pops in and like pops out. It kind of do I kind of like think about that is probably like, initially when we talk about like beings from the fifth dimension or sixth dimension, they can have access to our dimension, and they can disappear at will. They can come in and pop out, come in and pop out. Sometimes I think, like, when people say, hey, I just saw something, and just it just like vanished, it could be like something just like popping in from there, from to us.
I can't say no. Yes, it could be. That would be hyperdimensionality. Yes,
Yeah,
I
right.
cannot say no.
Like maybe this kind of maybe sort of explains the stories of
Yes.
seeing strange things in the sky, strange lights in the sky, and things disappearing out of nowhere, and all these kind of.
Let me also say that in the Orthodox Church, there are many saints
Yeah.
that have visited people.
Mhm.
And we even, for example, we have an icon of St. Nicholas. He's the basis of Santa Claus in our Las Vegas, of all places, where it's continuously streams myrrh, a beautiful, sweet smelling myrrh oil. And I believe it because I've seen it. It's been in my house, okay? And it's been in my father-in-law's house. And that I can explain with hyperdimensionality. Yes. Are there channels to a higher world, to a better world that may come here and give us hope and give us love and give us something to look forward to? Yes, I believe that. Absolutely.
Mm. One last thing that I want to touch about is about evolution. Actually, like
Yes.
so about have you so you always probably know about like the founder of DNA, like Francis Crick and everything. He
Yeah.
actually wrote a paper. I do not remember the name of the name of the paper, but it's panspermia, something I forgot. Like so he's the founder, he's the father of like DNA, right? He's the father who found like
Well,
the
this founder of discovering the structure of DNA.
structure of DNA.
And what? James Watson and Francis Crick.
Francis Crick, exactly. Sorry, I forgot the other person's name. So Francis Crick actually wrote a paper, and in this paper, his understanding of like was that he said that the current understanding that we have about our evolution, that like we are like from apes, we kind of like kind of like we became like humans and
Well, we are from apes. We just have a common ancestor.
yeah, but
They had an ancestor that they were, which was common, and then we just diverged.
Yeah. So I do not know the name of the paper, but I'm going to email you that paper. Okay, the paper
Sure.
that he wrote. It's about him telling us that the evolution doesn't completely like make sense. The evolution doesn't explain how the human brain size grew like double the size like within a short period of time, and it doesn't explain why where did we get this creativity from to build creativity on so many different things, to build, to design, to innovate everything that the evolution still doesn't explain. Yeah, okay, evolution kind of explains the opposable thumbs. Fine, that's great. Like how we move our legs and hands, but it still doesn't. Evolution doesn't explain our thought pattern, our like ideas, how where it's coming from, and all these kind of things. And his kind of like conclusion is that it sort of looks like we did not completely evolve within the earth. Rather, it could have been an extraterrestrial intervention, that there could have been I think you mentioned somewhere in the during the conversation as well, there could have been like seeds planted, some sort of like a tinkering duck,
Yes.
like on our DNA. So that explains why we have why we miss this, have this extra chromosome. Also, why compared to like compared to the other primates. So if evolution was a real thing, only one batch of the primates evolved into us, like you and me. But other primates are still like there. They are like, well, there is no. It doesn't look like there is any possibility that they are gonna like evolve and build a car, or build like a building. Or something. It looks like for a very, very, very long time they are what they are. But we are the only something broke within a certain primate which we evolved. So I mean, he's not a kook, he's He's
Yeah, no,
involved in like figuring out the structure of the DNA, everything. And this was his idea. This evolution, the Darwin's theory, doesn't explain completely. He said it's just a
yeah,
something is missing. Something there is a missing part in our history which we have no idea of, like what.
right.
Um,
Yeah. So, yeah. No. So first of all, I mean, I don't. I have nothing against evolution per se, except that it's not a finished theory. There are so many mechanisms, like jumping genes, of changing the genotype, that it's not. I don't believe it's just random chance. I think chance does have a factor in there, but I think there's something much deeper. Now, from an Orthodox Christian perspective, the creatures, us, the sort of before Adam and Eve, humans kind of evolved. They were intelligent, like Neanderthal man was apparently very intelligent. But at some point, God, like there was a saying when I was a kid. It was Paul Masson wines. No wine before its time. And so the world was like a garden. It was it's this biosphere of diversity and complexity. And it kind of went on its own. And at some point, God came and said, "Okay, I'm ready. This is what I want for the entity that is going to inherit the earth, and that's man." And then God blew His breath. It says it in the Bible, into Adam, and Adam breathed. The way I interpret that is God gave His hyperdimensional breath into and gave him a soul. And that was sort of this connection that God gave, who is not of this world, doesn't have to be in the world, doesn't have to interact with the world. He is like the painter. But when he saw what was ready, if humans came on the scene 5 million years ago, it wouldn't be so good for the humans. We wouldn't have survived because Earth was hot. There were a lot of volcanoes, dinosaurs. So things had to be prepared so that we could be ready to kind of inherit the earth, because Earth was hostile before. Now, the thing is that, again, we're only scratching the surface. Yes, there are mechanisms for genes to change. There's fruit flies. You can study this, genetics. You can look at crates. And there was Mendel, who looked at pea plants, and you can look at, white flowers versus the other color, yellow flowers or something, or pink, or yeah. So the point is that there's no question that there's a mechanism of the genetics, but there's something so much more. Even physicists, myself included, are asking questions. Look at DNA, how complicated it is. The hydrogen bonding. Is there some sort of a quantum wave function that connects all of the DNA together in like this beautiful state that would and that's why when I think that a human is born, I think the moment of fertilization, there's apparently a flash of light that is released when all this DNA comes together to form a new human being. I think that's when the soul is also created. And so that's why, be aware that for those babies that never made it to term, you'll meet them in heaven. You'll meet them in their the full form that God intended them to be. And so, yeah, I don't think that we're even close to understanding how the genes can change. Even the Soviets found that everybody was so anti-Lamarck. Lamarck had this attitude this perspective that environment could change genes, but the Russians actually showed with certain plants, you could change the nature of the genes dependent on if the soil had nutrients or if it didn't. So I would just say, I mean, I'm not a biologist, so I don't want to get any biologists, all upset, but and I'm not against evolution. I just think that we don't not even close to understanding the complexities of evolution and the hidden hand of God in bringing us to where we are today.
Yeah. And once again, even with what Francisco Croke wrote or what you are explaining, once again, it is not very far fetched, because a lot of ancient civilizations, we take the Sumerians, Egyptians, they all speak of a creator. They all speak of a creator who created them, who did something, who gave their wisdom, who gave their knowledge. and all these kind of things. So it's not far fetched, and also it is so weird. So when you think about it, like we think we are the advanced civilization, right? Because through phone, I can basically send you an email, I can get in touch with you, we can speak over Zoom and everything. But if you think about it, like what kind of technology did like the ancient civilizations and the religions like Christianity or like Hinduism or like the Sumerians or the Egyptians, what kind of technology did they have? Because this is the only technology that we are aware of. How come they all were writing about like beings coming down to the earth?
Exactly.
Bhagavad Gita, is it Bhagavad Gita talks about Vimana, like a spaceship like coming. And also I think there is a chapter in Bible like Ezekiel, which talks about like this fire wheels with wings and everything like coming down. Sumerians as well, they said like, we were created by these beings. You have to, think about it, like they all share similarities. There are so many similarities. So you can't, there's, are you telling me that they all communicated with each other to write the same story? No, unless they all shared a same story. They all encountered the same things within each other. They all had some sort of an understanding with whatever. They were able to like record that and everything. So it's not very far-fetched to say like what you're like, yeah.
No, for example, it's widely believed that when Jesus was born, there was a supernova. And the supernova, those are events that are the most illuminating events in the whole universe. And so, I mean, and it wasn't just the wise three kings that came to his manger. It was all over the world. There were records that there was a supernova. Now, what was, did God decide to have a supernova at the moment that Jesus was born? Why not? I mean, I can't say yes or no. There was a scientist that was explaining. He had an explanation for when Moses parted the seas, when he was escaping from Egypt. And it came from something to do with winds and some sort of oscillations in the Dead Sea there, or the sea that he escaped. Fine. So he's got a mechanism. God will do what God will do. If God decided I'm going to set up a wind so I can separate the seas and let Moses escape, good. What's wrong with that? I mean, you know, humans always have this need to explain, but at the same time, it's not a full explanation. There's much more to it than meets the eye. We have five senses, and for the lucky ones, maybe six. Okay. Or we all have six, but we just are not in tune with that sixth sense. But the point is, there's a lot much more going on that we're just not getting from because we're not able to detect it. But it doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah. One last question, just one last question. Do you have, in your lifetime, do you have like this dream or a goal of like certain things in science as a physicist, as a professor? Like, hey, I just want to make sure I get these things like sorted out. This is the kind of like mark I want to leave behind, but this is the kind of like legacy I want to leave behind. Do you have any projects like?
Great question. Yeah. I have to write a book, okay, about all these ideas.
Yeah.
I've started the book. I've written parts of the book, but unfortunately, due to my probably ADHD, very, very distracted, busy state, it's taking a long time. So I need to, that I have to do before I leave this earth for sure, to pull this all together. And, I've developed some wonderful technology using X-rays. I'd like to see that. My university is pushing me to start up a company, so we'll see. To recharge batteries using X-rays, and there are other things like making vaccines, real vaccines, not these weird mRNA, using X-rays. So I want to do that. So there's a few things, and definitely my wave theory of of the brain. I'd like to see that start to take fruition. In psychotherapy, there's two branches. There's one which is the drug branch. You treat problems with drugs, like lithium, or lorazepam, a Valium. Then there's another approach where you talk for your problems out. I want to develop a third approach using waves. So I would like that as a legacy. And I think I know how to do that. with experiments and stuff like that. So those are the so you doing that, getting my X-ray technology, and writing this book. Yes, I would like to do those things.
When I was like preparing, like just like, like kind of like preparing things for this particular call, one of the things that I was going to recommend towards the end of the call is like, you have to really think about writing a book. Really, just like put all like, because like I said, imagination is an amazing thing, whether people agree with it or not, or just for the fun of it, just for the sake of imagination, put them all in a book and like, we'll see. Like, yeah, I mean, nothing, no, nothing imaginative is too crazy because we have no complete understanding of like what's going on. It's a great
Yeah,
idea.
we don't.
Really, I really, it's great. One thing that I also want to recommend is that, have you heard of this guy? He's an archaeologist, but when you Google him, you're gonna see he's a pseudo archaeologist, pseudo journalist, Graham Hancock.
I've heard of the name. Somebody mentioned him to me, but I don't know much
Have to
about it.
read his books, but he's not with science or anything like that. But he's into like ancient civilizations, like
Okay,
Sumerians, like the civilizations before Ice Age, during Ice Age, because he has
sure.
basic understanding of like with everything that he has like researched around the world. Because he's saying, because his whole theory is that there's a lot of information gap between everything that we know today.
Yeah.
And it all somewhere goes down to there are ancient civilizations and why they were more connected to the cosmos, and like what are we going wrong. So his like books, like the one book that I would recommend is like The Magicians of the Gods,
Okay.
Fingerprints of the Gods. Mind blowing stuff. It's heavy, but it's like mind
Okay.
blowing stuff. And also like Supernaturals, if you want to, yeah, another one of his book if you want to, because
Yeah.
it's experimented with psychedelics and stuff. So he wrote a book
Yeah.
called Supernatural.
About that. Oh, even how were the pyramids made? That's to have that kind of seal, and that there was some technology obviously shared with Egypt and then South America. I mean,
Oh my
there are
God, you
still.
have to read a book. If you read the book and if you just, the thing is that nobody is like negating his claims with proper proof. Rather, they're negating his claims like, you're a pseudo this.
Yeah, I know.
That's a straightforward attack. Now everything is an attack. Like it's a weapon. Anti-Semitic, pseudo this, anti-vax, anti-science, anti-climate change, transphobic, homophobic. It's a weapon.
That's right.
These are
That's right.
words which carry real heavy meaning. But when you
Yes.
use it like whenever it pleases you, whenever you want to shut someone down, it loses its weight and it loses its meaning, and it's just like a weapon. So it's very hard.
Yeah. Well, no, for somebody who's been speaking out since 1992 as an activist, I'm not afraid. I mean, at some point at the end of the day, you have to decide, I mean, I would like to make a positive legacy. I mean, it doesn't have to be, a giant or anything but just, I want to do what I believe is right. And, that entails the ability to think freely, which we all have that gift, and the ability to speak out. I'm not going to force my points of view down anybody's throat, but at the same time, don't persecute me because I happen to disagree with you, or I have this perspective of hyperdimensionality or religion that you don't. I mean, that doesn't. I'm not going to discount your perspective, but don't discount mine. Don't try and shut me down because you don't like what I happen to say. The essence of academia and intellectualism is being able to think freely. And so right now, unfortunately, we're getting into a point of time where academia, and again, there are problems. There are things I'm not going to fully defend with what has happened with woke culture and some of the fanaticism. But at the same time, in academia, you have the essence of growing intellectually is not being afraid to think differently than others. And that's how some of the greatest achievements happened in humanity is somebody said, wait a minute, I don't see that the way you see this. And then they ended up finding out that they were right. Boltzmann, I think Ludwig was his name, Boltzmann had this view of atoms, of what we call quantum statistical mechanics. Nobody believed him. And the poor guy committed suicide in his 40s, and only to be proven completely correct 7 or 8 years later. So, I mean, that was a tragedy. And so, I'm not, we should never be ostracize people who think differently, because that's often how humanity bootstraps itself. My students will say, Doc, I hope this is not a stupid question. No, 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 no. There's no such thing as a stupid question. The stupid question is the one that was never asked. The point is sometimes those so-called stupid questions generate Nobel Prizes. And we need to remember that as human beings, that we should never be afraid to ask a question. You can debate, you can disagree, civilly, of course. But the point is, when you start shutting down intellectual inquiry, humanity's lost. We're finished. We're just going to be slaves to somebody who's going to be a scientifically illiterate dummy oligarch who doesn't know anything. And now they've brought us back into the Middle Ages. That's Middle Age thinking.
Yeah. That's actually like a perfect way to
Resist that.
yeah, it's a perfect way to end this. Sir, thank you so much. Really, you have no idea. This is one of the coolest things I've done. I'm not just speaking in the podcast, but in general, this is the coolest conversations I've ever had. Like, it's such a good brain tickle, honestly, like talking with you. I completely enjoy the conversations. Your students are very, very lucky, really, for you to for someone like you to be there to like guide them, not just in science, but in terms of like how to think, to be creative, to be imaginative. Because at a time when everybody is asked to like just box themselves into certain beliefs and everything, you are like going in like different, like you are like cracking in like different directions and everything. And I think it's amazing that they have you to like guide them, because it's nice to see these are this is the person who is guiding future scientists, right? And it's amazing, really. I'm very, very grateful for this conversation. Thank you so much. I completely like enjoyed it. This is one of the best things that I've done, so I'm very, very grateful for you and for your
No
time.
problem.
And thanks a lot, really. Thank you so much.